Marvel, it starts when it links with a great clock of the Super God Academy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176, Playing Data Penetration in Front of the Big Clock? Ridiculous. Supreme Wisdom, you can actually detect some information that has appeared in my mind. This ability is also very outstanding. Li Qingyun looked at Izai who appeared in front of him and immediately understood what was going on. Every time the Supreme Wisdom appeared in front of people's consciousness, it appeared in the image of the person the other party cared about the most. But it was obvious that this Supreme Wisdom could not invade Li Qingyun's brain. It could not invade Li Qingyun's brain, but the Supreme Wisdom knew that Li Qingyun was not directly participating in the war, but he was the key to dominating the entire battlefield. It knew that the Skyblade was sent by Li Qingyun, and those open wormholes were all controlled by Li Qingyun. Li Qingyun was the key to providing core output and energy supply for the entire war. Therefore, no matter what, the Supreme Wisdom had to interfere with Li Qingyun, at least to prevent Li Qingyun from controlling the battlefield in real time, so that their numerical advantage could be brought into play. It's a good idea, but unfortunately, you don't know who I care about the most. Li Qingyun's face was full of disdain. Izai? That was just the most perfect creature in his ideal that he showed to the Supreme Evolution. But who is the person that Li Qingyun cares about the most? There is no one in this world, nor in the Super God's universe. What Li Qingyun cares about the most is his former parents from the real world. But how can outsiders know all this? If you can't really invade Li Qingyun's brain, you can't get the most accurate information. This effect of influencing others' thoughts with a person you care about the most is equivalent to nothing. Impossible. This trick of mine has never been wrong, the Supreme Wisdom said, and it tried again to read Li Qingyun's brain information. But this time, her image changed, from Xianji Wang Hexi to Xianqi Wang Liangbing. The greatest evil in the known universe looks pleasing to the eye. You, the Supreme Wisdom was angry. She raised one hand and pointed directly at Li Qingyun. But this action, combined with Liangbing's appearance, made the action look more like Liangbing's angry look in the cartoon. You should save it, Li Qingyun teased. You are really showing off your skills in front of Guangguang by playing with information reading in front of me. Behind Li Qingyun is the big clock. Although the Supreme Wisdom is also a so-called supercomputer, it is the only biological computer in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But the computing capacity and functions of the Supreme Wisdom are simply a world apart compared to the big clock. Impossible. Even if your technology is very advanced, how is it possible that I can't even interfere with you? The Supreme Wisdom felt unbelievable. It knew that it couldn't directly break into Li Qingyun's computer network, but its original intention was just to interfere with Li Qingyun so that he couldn't control the direction of the entire battlefield. Now, Li Qingyun has no effect at all, and instead mocked the Supreme Wisdom fiercely. What's the point? Li Qingyun said, and his eyes were instantly covered by a layer of white mist. Since the Supreme Wisdom has taken the initiative to provoke him, how can he remain indifferent? He must give it a return gift. As Li Qingyun called upon the dark energy, a communication command directly followed the illusion that the Supreme Wisdom was using to attack him and attacked the host of the Supreme Wisdom. This time, it was not like before, when Li Qingyun was just trying out a small trick. This time, Li Qingyun directly used the huge computing power of the big clock to reversely invade the entire control system of the Supreme Wisdom with data. In just a moment, the entire communication network of the Kree Empire, which was originally established by the Supreme Wisdom, was directly cut off. Even the communication of Thanos' army was gone. It can be said that Thanos became a blind and deaf disabled person and could no longer perceive any situation around him. The commander on the spaceship was killed, and there was no intruder in his own spaceship. Even the direction of advance began to deviate. Control the control system of all the opposite spaceships. As Li Qingyun spoke, the big clock immediately executed the operation. The invasion of data information was completed in just a few seconds. All the spaceships began to turn and crash into Mars on the side. In Sanctuary Number 2, Dark Knight Proxima was also the first to notice this situation. Sir, our spaceship is controlled by the enemy. They are manipulating our spaceship to crash into Mars. At this speed, if all of them really crash into Mars, all the spaceships will be completely destroyed, Dark Midnight Proxima reported, and Supergiant used her ability to enter the brains of the operators on other spaceships to understand the situation. It's Li Qingyun. He invaded the artificial intelligence system of the Supreme Wisdom. Now the functions of the Supreme Wisdom have all failed. Li Qingyun has mastered the control of all spaceships, Supergiant said. Then just cut off all external communications, shut down all wireless networks, and switch to manual control, Thanos shouted loudly. It's not that he has to do this, but facing the crazy attack of the goddess of death Hela, he is in an extremely embarrassing situation. He was previously besieged Hela with General Corvus Glaive, Dark Midnight Proxima and Supergiant. Now that the spaceship has a problem, two of them have left the battle, leaving Thanos and General Corvus Glaive, and his situation has become more difficult. It's already this time, and you still have time to distract yourself and do other things, Hela said, and the Sword of Eternal Night slashed directly at Thanos' right arm. Although this sword did not directly cut off Thanos' entire arm, the wound left behind had already cut off half of his bones. Even if Thanos' body can be healed, it will take time for such a serious wound to heal, and during this time, his combat effectiveness will inevitably be greatly reduced. Almost at the same time, Hela threw two flying swords backhanded, stabbing at General Corvus Glaive's chest and head. General Corvus Glaive quickly blocked with his weapon, but he blocked the one on his head, but he couldn't block the one in his chest. The long sword pierced his heart directly. General Corvus Glaive is not Thanos, he does not have that super healing ability. Moreover, even if it is Thanos, if he is pierced directly through the heart like this, it would be very dangerous. No, Dark Knight Proxima roared. She picked up her weapon and rushed up to seek revenge on Hela. But before she could rush over, a flying blade appeared out of thin air behind him and cut off his head in an instant. Li Qingyun's long-range attack had been going on all the time. He had been accurately calculating the timing of killing each person worth killing. And now was the best time to take the head of Dark Knight Proxima. Chapter 177, Defeat is certain, Thanos' dying struggle. General Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight died in battle, and Thanos' 5 black generals only had one superstar left. The most important thing is that the entire fleet is now in a state of defeat, and all the initiative is completely controlled by Li Qingyun. Do you think you can suppress us with your large number of people? Hela saw Thanos panic at the moment. Thanos spent so much time to develop the current size of the army, and also joined forces with the Kree Empire, which made the size of their combined fleet expand several times. This time, they came with 5 mothership-level spacecraft such as Sanctuary 2, and the other small spacecrafts were even more numerous. Li Qingyun's super god civilization has a much larger total number of people than the two combined, but the number of people who can really participate in space battles is no more than a few thousand. Moreover, most of them are the undead army brought by Hela this time. Super god civilization is in its infancy, and even the Super God Academy has not been established for a long time. There were only a few superheroes around Li Qingyun, and the rest were basically SYNOPSIS. But now, it was just these few thousand people who stopped Thanos and the hundreds of thousands of troops of the Kree Empire in space. If it weren't for you and your army of the dead, how could he and the Earthlings behind him stop us? Thanos still understood the situation. Although the communication was completely cut off now, he still knew the specific situation of the 5 motherships being attacked at the beginning. Only Hela came to Thanos' shelter too, but on the other motherships, there was a relatively strong one, such as Captain Marvel, Thor and King Devourer. But Thor acted with Hulk, Iron Man, Spider-Man and other people from the Super Seminary. Captain Marvel was with the Avengers. King Devourer was also accompanied by other SYNOPSIS. And the last one was Hela's Fenrir giant wolf with a team of undead army to launch an attack. The most important thing is the huge army in their fleet. They have hundreds of thousands of troops. While their commanders are struggling, these hundreds of thousands of soldiers rushed forward in one breath. The Dark Star and the Dark Elf mothership on the opposite side should have been beaten into a hornet's nest long ago. But at this time, the undead army played a huge role. They were originally undead, and they didn't need to care about the harsh environment in the universe at all. They could directly enter the universe to fight. Together with the SYNOPSIS, they formed a huge protective circle around the 2 motherships to ensure the absolute safety of the motherships. There are not so many ifs in this world, Hela said. At this time, their spaceship had entered the gravity circle of Mars. This means that they are about to crash. Once they crash, no matter how many troops there are in the spaceship, they will be blown up along with the spaceship. Supergiant, start the transmission device and send all the soldiers to Mars. Thanos looked at the supergiant beside him. In this case where communication is completely blocked, only the supergiant has the ability to control everything. It has come to this point. What can you do by dropping these soldiers? Hela knew that she could not stop the supergiant from doing those things, because Thanos had already stood in front of her after giving the order. You no longer have this opportunity to drop. Li Qingyun's voice came, and then a flying blade flew out of the wormhole again. This time, the flying blade locked onto the supergiant. At the same time, more flying blades began to fly towards the power systems of those motherships at the same time. All the spaceships have entered the gravity circle of Mars. Even without the power system, they will crash into the surface of Mars on their own. Therefore, destroying these power systems now can completely prevent them from making other moves. They will just fall straight down, and then with the explosion of the spacecraft, everything will be destroyed. Li Qingyun, Thanos' face became even uglier. He turned his head and looked at the supergiant who suddenly fell behind him. All of Thanos' capable men were dead, and they all died because of Li Qingyun. Moreover, this time, their spaceship was about to crash, and all his troops would be completely destroyed in the process of the crash. Hela, Devourer, Thor, Danvers, you evacuate immediately. Li Qingyun ignored Thanos and gave orders to others directly. The supreme wisdom was directly suppressed by Li Qingyun, and the intelligence systems of all these spaceships were controlled by Li Qingyun. Now, in a short time, their flight positions were adjusted to make them crash into Mars. In addition, all the power systems have been destroyed now, and this crash is irreversible. Thor and others who received the order immediately followed Li Qingyun's instructions. From the beginning of the battle to now, every step they took was in accordance with Li Qingyun's instructions. Li Qingyun is the one who dominates the entire war, and all of them know this. Want to leave? No way. Thanos is now furious. How could he let Hela leave the spaceship like this? At the moment when the wormhole appeared, he waved a double-edged sword without hesitation and chopped towards the location of the wormhole. This kind of slash will not cause damage to the wormhole, but facing such a slash, Hela can't go through it directly. Hela can only step aside to dodge this attack. Then, Thanos rushed up again immediately. He began to stick to Hela directly, launching extremely strong attacks again and again. His purpose is very simple, that is, to prevent Hela from leaving. Now Thanos has reached the point of madness. At this point in the battle, Thanos has already known that he has no chance to turn over this time, and his end is doomed. However, Thanos is not the kind of person who will give up easily, and he still has one last chance. If he can subdue Hela and capture Hela, then maybe he can make a deal with Li Qingyun. He just needs to leave here alive. At worst, he can hide in the universe and grow in a wretched way. He is an eternal race, and his lifespan is eternal. Whether it is Li Qingyun or Hela, their lifespan cannot be longer than his. Therefore, as long as he waits for thousands or tens of thousands of years, he may be able to make a comeback one day in the future. Chapter 178 The Last Chance, Surrender. Thanos is now doomed to fail, and he wants to grab Hela as his last straw. However, when Li Qingyun saw that everyone else had returned, but only Hela could not get away, he immediately took action. Passing through the wormhole, Li Qingyun came directly to the command hall of Sanctuary 2. While Thanos and Hela were fighting fiercely, he used the sword of Xianxia to directly block the two of them. Li Qingyun. Thanos looked at Li Qingyun in front of him, and his expression became a little complicated. This was his first face-to-face contact with Li Qingyun, but everything Thanos had was lost because of Li Qingyun. He had carefully planned a plan to seize the Infinity Stones. Now he finally found the supreme wisdom to join forces and launch this full-scale attack. But in the end, the Infinity Stone plan was stillborn, and the full-scale attack was stopped before it could reach the Earth. You don't look like the Thanos I know. Li Qingyun still remembered the ambitious Thanos in the Avengers movie who worked hard to maintain the balance and sustainable development of the universe. What's the point of looking like him or not? The result is the same anyway. Thanos was also very depressed at this time. He used to be such a glorious person. With his army, he swept across the entire universe. Any interstellar empire would bow down obediently when seeing him. But now, he can only live a life of hiding in the universe. It was not easy to unite with the Kree Empire and prepare for a Jedi counterattack, but the result was such a fate. That's right, Li Qingyun said. Hela, you go back first, I'll be here. Li Qingyun opened a wormhole behind him. You want to stay? Healer was a little worried. The spaceship was about to crash. If Li Qingyun stayed in the spaceship, wouldn't he be affected? Don't worry, this spaceship crash has no effect on me. Li Qingyun is now a 4th-generation divine body. Unless it is a supernova, ordinary explosions really can't hurt him. Okay, be careful. Healer didn't insist too much. Anyway, even she herself didn't care too much about the spaceship crash, but she would definitely be able to take advantage of Li Qingyun. Healer entered the wormhole and left. Thanos was watching from the opposite side, but he didn't make a move. Li Qingyun was here in person, and he would definitely be stopped if he made a move, so there was no point at all. Thanos now was actually very embarrassed at this time. He met Healer and couldn't beat him. Now that Li Qingyun came, he couldn't beat him even more. He wanted to leave but couldn't. What was the point of him launching this invasion? This is basically to die. Powerless, Thanos at this moment only felt that his whole body was full of powerlessness. Li Qingyun was helpless watching Thanos like this. His time travel itself was different from others. Others kept fighting monsters and upgrading, beating them one by one, and then becoming the strongest. But Li Qingyun didn't need it. He only needed to learn how to use the super god technology and how to integrate it into his body. Another thing was to combine the super god technology with a powerful supernatural energy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe to study more powerful technology. In short, Li Qingyun became stronger in the process of his own research and development, and he didn't need to fight at all. Moreover, Li Qingyun's upgrade was very fast, and each upgrade was leap forward. The difference before and after the upgrade was simply a world of difference. The last time Thanos knew Li Qingyun was probably when Li Qingyun killed Ego of the Celestial Clan, and at most when Li Qingyun suppressed Hercules afterwards. But after that, Li Qingyun directly upgraded to the 4th generation of Divine Body, mastered the Black Hole Engine, and also had a flying blade made by imitating the silver wings of the Holy Kisha. Now Li Qingyun, it is said that he can beat 10 of his former selves, which is an understatement. Boom. Next to him, a spaceship fell directly on Mars, causing a huge explosion. Then came the 2nd and 3rd ships, and finally even Sanctuary 2, where Li Qingyun and Thanos were, crashed into the ground of Mars. A huge explosion rose into the sky, and Li Qingyun and Thanos were directly engulfed by the flames in the spaceship. Outside Mars, everyone in the Dark Star, the Dark Elf spaceship, and the Teoti Cross flagship were watching what was happening on Mars. None of them went in to see the situation immediately, and they would not worry about Li Qingyun being in danger. Because the communication network of the big clock was still there, everyone in the spaceship could see what was happening on Li Qingyun's side. Except for these small spaceships and some Leviathan monsters that were still in space, the hundreds of thousands of troops of Thanos and the Kree Empire were basically burned to ashes along with the crashed huge motherships. In this burning flame, on the ruined wreckage of the spaceship, Li Qingyun was still standing safely. Opposite him, Thanos was not dead yet. His armor was already tattered, his skin and flesh were burned, and there were many huge wounds cut by the flying objects produced by the explosion. However, he had the ability to heal, and these wounds were healing rapidly. In the surrounding spaceships, there were actually dozens of people who were still alive like Thanos. Among them were 2 or 3 accusers of the Kree Empire, and 20 or 30 sentinels that had been detected by the big clock. They were either lucky or relied on their own strong fighting power, so they were able to withstand the impact of the explosion and survive. However, they did not have Thanos' healing ability. If they were injured, they could only lie on the ground and wait to die, and those who were not seriously injured were also at a loss at this time. Hundreds of thousands of troops were overwhelming and killing towards the Earth. Now, before they even saw the face of the Earth, they had all been defeated and fell on the surface of Mars. They all slowly gathered towards Li Qingyun. They were all looking at Li Qingyun and Thanos. They all knew that this might be the last chance. As long as they captured Li Qingyun, they would be able to make the 3 motherships outside and the thousands of powerful enemies on them wait for death. But they also knew that it was impossible for them to capture Li Qingyun. I'll give you a chance to surrender to me. Are you willing to accept it? Li Qingyun did not take action directly. Those who could survive were all capable, and Li Qingyun's super god civilization was now lacking such capable subordinates. Sentinels, never surrender. Those sentinels rushed out without hesitation. They were transformed by the supreme wisdom. Although they were living beings, their brains had already been transformed and controlled. They only knew how to fight. However, Before they rushed to Li Qingyun, a bunch of black flying blades pierced through their bodies. Li Qingyun directly resolved these flying blades in their bodies. Chapter 179. Thanos is a paranoid. 20 or 30 sentinels, without exception, were all killed instantly by the flying blades. In a moment, there were only a dozen people left from the dozens of people who had survived, and most of them were unable to move because of serious injuries. Therefore, the only ones who really have a choice now are Thanos and the three accusers. The flying blades were directly released into those people's bodies, and then the sentinels were killed from the inside out. This move made the three accusers no longer have the slightest thought of resistance. They all put down their universal weapons, knelt on their knees, and crawled on the ground. As for Thanos, he was still standing there. Although he was still alive, he was desperate in his heart. Because his dream could no longer be realized, it would be better to end this life like this instead of being controlled by others in this life and becoming a thug under someone else's command. But if he really died like this, wouldn't everything be over? What if he continued to live and Li Qingyun died in the end? Wouldn't he be able to make a comeback by then? The dignity of a king and his mission in life, these things overlapped together, making it difficult for Thanos to make a decision. Should he endure humiliation and live in secret, and try his best to make a comeback in the future? Or should he be a real man and die rather than surrender? Big Clock, give him a set of family planning plans, Li Qingyun said, and then the Big Clock immediately sorted out the information and transmitted it to Thanos' mind. The next moment, Thanos, who was still hesitating, was stunned. Looking at the information pouring into his mind and the content in the information. For sustainable population development, we should choose guidance and advocacy. How can we force it? Li Qingyun said, walking towards Thanos' position. Moreover, the method you originally used only treats the symptoms but not the root cause. After a snap of the fingers, half of the population died, but the remaining half saw that the resources were sufficient and there was no pressure, so they would create people again. In a few decades, everything will return to the way it was. Li Qingyun had come to Thanos' side at this time, with a hand on his shoulder. That relaxed and comfortable look, completely unprepared, as if he wasn't afraid of Thanos' sneak attack. You've joined forces with the Kree Empire. You should know the Skrulls they're hunting, right? There were only a few thousand or tens of thousands of people left after they were hunted. Did you see how many people came out after Captain Marvel found a new planet for them to live in? Also, haven't you investigated the situation of those planets with life where you slaughtered half of their population? After you finished killing, how much of the population size recovered after a few decades? Li Qingyun's words stunned Thanos. He hadn't thought about these questions at all. The destruction of Titan had given him an obsession, believing that only by destroying half of the life could the remaining half live better. But now think about it, from the time he discovered this problem to the destruction of the entire planet, it actually took several decades. During these decades, if the family planning plan given to him by Li Qingyun was implemented, the population would not be reduced all at once, but at least it would not continue to grow. But what if? As medical standards become higher and higher, people's lifespan also increases? In this case, even if the number of births decreases, the total population will continue to grow. Thanos suddenly realized a problem. Since medical standards have improved and human life expectancy has increased, will the level of technology also improve? After the level of technology improves, can't people migrate to other planets? Li Qingyun couldn't figure it out. Why would Thanos still be entangled in this issue? The issue of population size has never been the key to him. The key is the supporting resources and the efficiency of resource utilization. The human beings on Earth and the devouring star have developed hundreds of times in just a few thousand years, from the original billions to hundreds of billions and even to trillions. But what does it matter? With the development of technology, the development of the universe and the utilization rate of resources have increased. Just imagine, the population of Earth today is 7 billion, right? But if Mars is transformed into a planet of life, and 3.5 billion people are transferred directly to it at that time, will the population pressure on Earth still be tight? Thanos, I find that you are actually a paranoid. You have been traumatized by your experience on Titan, so you have never been able to get out of it. Li Qingyun did not understand why the movie set such a background for Thanos. Because of overpopulation, resources are insufficient, and finally the planet is destroyed. It has developed to the space age. How simple is it to come up with an interstellar immigration policy? You said that the universe will be full one day because of too many people. Let alone the problem of the universe being infinite, just the point of being full. Can human technology develop, and the thinking not progress? From the 1960s and 1970s, humans on Earth have developed from the idea of eugenics to the idea of eugenics, and the more developed the technology and economy are, the lower the population birth rate will be. Like the super God's universe, once the civilization begins to develop, its population will decrease sharply. The total population of the TOD civilization is less than 1 million, and the angel civilization is only 30,000, which is enough to explain the problem. This rule, you, Thanos, are known as the genius scientist of Titan, and you drive a spaceship around the universe. How can you not see it? If you say that the planet is destroyed because the Celestials will appear, then the reason is reasonable. But not every planet with life in this universe has the seeds of the Celestials. You destroy half of all for a part of it, isn't that putting the cart before the horse? Moreover, you are going to destroy the entire universe later, can't you just snap your fingers and destroy all the seeds of the Celestials? In the end, it's just that the screenwriter had a brain spurt. The original reason that Thanos destroyed half of the life in order to please the death of one of the 5 gods was not useful, because the setting of the 5 gods had not been thought out at that time, so this reason was used. Far-fetched. Now Li Qingyun has traveled through time and he has come here. He read Thanos' brain with a big clock, and he didn't find the setting of death. According to the analysis of the big clock, it was found that Thanos was getting stuck in a dead end. The Titans at that time were similar to the current Earth, and their thoughts were not as advanced as the current Earthlings. The birth rate on Earth has begun to change. Although it is still increasing, it has not exploded like in the past few decades. But the Titans are not like that. They are not aware of these problems, and no one cares about them, which led to their final destruction. In the final analysis, it is just the stupidity of the people on a planet that led to their own tragedy. As for Thanos, he is another tragedy that survived on this tragic planet. Because of his own experience, he wants to transfer this tragedy to all human beings in the universe. I have told you what I should tell you. You can decide what to choose next, Li Qingyun said, and then stood aside quietly, waiting for Thanos' final decision. Chapter 180 The End of the War. Thanos thought for a long time, and finally shook his head helplessly. Perhaps what Li Qingyun said was right, but he had insisted on his previous ideas for so many years, how could he let it go now? However, whether it was for the sake of growth or to verify what Li Qingyun had taught him, he had to stay alive first. So, he chose to bow his head temporarily. I am willing to follow you. Thanos bowed his head, which was considered as surrender to Li Qingyun. He did not surrender completely. The big clock read the information of Thanos' brain. After Li Qingyun upgraded to the 4th generation of divine body and possessed the black hole engine, his insight eye ability had actually been improved. In the past, Li Qingyun could not read the detailed information in the mind of people of Thanos level. But now, it is no longer a problem. Today, Li Qingyun is basically invincible and almost omnipotent if the real wall hanging does not appear. It doesn't matter. His thoughts have begun to waver. When he sees the development of super god civilization in the future, he will naturally understand some truths slowly, Li Qingyun said. Do you mean to let them join the Super God Academy? Asked the big clock. No, they are non-staff members of the super god civilization, and they are temporary workers who do things for us. Li Qingyun will not hand over the core secrets to these people. Even if he can read the information in their brains now, he will not allow it. After all, if someone like Thanos is already quite outstanding, and he is very strong in technology and force, he may find a way to deal with Li Qingyun if he is exposed to super god technology. Therefore, whether it is Thanos or the 3 accusers, they can't enter the core layer of the Super God Academy. Li Qingyun recruited them because the scale of the current Super God civilization is too large, and there are too few people who can do things. Just like Luoxing, Majixing, and Erasxing, which are gradually entering the pre-nuclear era, there needs to be a strong enough person to preside over the overall situation. In the Super God Academy, the only one who can bear such a heavy responsibility now is Hela. But Hela is a close person around Li Qingyun, so how can she be sent to other planets to perform tasks all the time? Therefore, Li Qingyun thought of recruiting these survivors. They were all high-ranking officials in the Kree Empire. They must have a good grasp of managing 1 or 2 life planets. The Dark Star soon arrived on the surface of Mars. Stark and others came out one after another, looking at the battlefield, which was now full of corpses, and Thanos and the three accusers standing behind Li Qingyun. For the first time, they truly felt the power of the super god civilization and the power of Li Qingyun. With a difference of hundreds of times in number, relying on the ability of the big clock and Li Qingyun, they won the battle so easily. This is a god-killing level battle, and it is still an imperfect god-killing battle. If the war mode shown in the underlying database of the big clock is really completely reproduced, there is no need for thousands of people. A team of hundreds of super soldiers, relying on a celestial-level spacecraft, can easily accomplish all this. After the first wave of god-killing number 1 bullets attacked, all the combat commanders of the entire legion were swept away. It would not be too troublesome to deal with the other large number of soldiers. After all, according to the data setting, the combat capability of a super soldier is comparable to that of a spaceship. And this is comparable in performance. In actual combat, the flexibility of super soldiers will be even stronger. Therefore, hundreds of super soldiers are far better than hundreds of spaceships with excellent performance. In this kind of space, hundreds of super soldiers are enough to sweep the battlefield. From today on, the 4 of them are peripheral personnel of the Super Seminary, responsible for assisting the Super Seminary in managing other life planets, Li Qingyun introduced. Everyone was a little confused when they heard his introduction. It would be fine if there were 3 accusers, but Thanos was a long-known overlord in the universe, an existence that could make all forces in the entire universe fear him. Now, he, the dignified overlord of the universe, was captured by Li Qingyun, and he was willing to surrender. Are you sure he is really willing to surrender? Hela came to Li Qingyun's side. She knew Thanos before he was sealed. As a member of the Eternals, and having come from the Titan era to the current cosmic overlord, he has a very crazy ideal, which is to destroy half of the life in the universe. If Thanos joins the super god civilization, he will have the opportunity to come into contact with Li Qingyun and the technology, infinite gems and so on around him, and he is likely to betray. Not completely willing, Li Qingyun said with a smile. Then why did you let him join? Wanda was also confused at this time. I just let him become a peripheral staff of the Super God Academy, and he can't get in touch with the core technology, so naturally there is no need to worry about the secrets being leaked, Li Qingyun said. Now, our Super God civilization has just been established, and we need enough manpower to assist in management. Thanos and these accusers are just right, Li Qingyun explained his true intention of doing so. Is this safe? Wanda was still a little worried. I'm here, so there's no need to worry, Li Qingyun said with a smile. What are you going to do next? Hela asked, looking at the wreckage of the spacecraft around her. Let Thanos and his men stay here, and those soldiers outside who have not been killed yet will stay here to help them build a base on Mars. Li Qingyun had already had an idea. Although he was not going to build a solar system defense line here, he still had to prepare a few defense bases. And Thanos and his vanguard in Chitauri Corps, such cosmic creatures, were just right. Although most of the vanguard and Chitauri Corps had been destroyed along with Sanctuary 2, there were still quite a few in the space outside, those soldiers who were scattered and were originally going to besiege the Dark Star, the Dark Elf Mothership and the Teoti Cross flagship. Then what? Hela asked again. You take your undead core and go to the large Magellanic Cloud. Li Qingyun looked at Hela and said. The Supreme Wisdom has been controlled by me, and I will clean and reset its memory and system later. From now on, the large Magellanic Cloud will be completely controlled by our super god civilization, and your mission is to eradicate all the planets and groups that disobey me. Good. Hela was very satisfied with her mission. The former executioner of Asgard can finally return to his old job. Chapter 181 Methods and Patterns for Rapidly Becoming Stronger. Hela led the undead army to the large Magellanic system. Captain Marvel chose to go with her because she was worried that Hela would be too cruel and kill innocent people too much. However, Hela was executing the orders issued by Li Qingyun, and Captain Marvel could not hinder her much. As for the 3 accusers, the Great Clock directly selected 3 life planets and sent them there. Of course, before they went, Li Qingyun implanted a special device in their bodies to keep track of their situation and control them at any time. Li Qingyun returned to the Super God Academy and began to continue his original research. Although this war seems to be large in scale, it actually has little impact on Li Qingyun. When a main god civilization under super god technology develops, normal wars are no longer meaningful to them. The so-called numerical advantage of Thanos and the Kree Empire can be easily controlled in front of Li Qingyun. The super god civilization now has tens of billions of people, but if there is no super god academy of their own, they can be easily controlled in front of Thanos. So, in the final analysis, the existence of the highest combat power is the key to whether a civilization is strong or not. Big Clock, do you think the path I took before was a deviation? Li Qingyun now needs some experience from predecessors, and as the celestial computer with the largest information storage capacity in the super god universe, the Big Clock naturally has all the successful cases. From the Shen civilization to the subsequent angel civilization and demon civilization, the army was the core at the beginning, the Big Clock answered. In the early days of the Mellow Heavenly Court, the Holy Keisha, the Apocalypse King Liangbing, and the Heavenly Base King Hezai joined forces to lead hundreds of thousands of female angels to fight against Hua Yi's millions of male angels, but in the end, it was the battle between the three angel kings and the Heavenly Palace King Hua Yi that decided the outcome. Because the Heavenly Palace King was defeated, the millions of troops under his command were scattered in an instant. So, when a superior force is strong enough, the large-scale army loses its meaning of existence. The later Mellow Heavenly Court also gradually developed into an angel army of only tens of thousands of people. The data at the Big Clock are all derived from real cases, and the meaning to be expressed is also very clear. In the later period of Death God Karl, he had many space-level technological civilizations such as Teodi and Giant Wolf under his command, but in fact, the strongest combat power was the four Knights of the Void, but it was just these four people who could make all the four major divine civilizations in the universe unable to compete with him. So, when a person's strength is truly the strongest, then the army under his command is no longer so important. The Big Clock gave the final clear answer, and this disaster was similar to what Li Qingyun had imagined. One person guarding a country can appear in costume TV dramas, and it is naturally possible in the current universe background. Li Qingyun is not ignorant of this truth. In fact, he has been thinking about his own strength from the beginning. But the establishment of the super god civilization, managing dozens of life planets and tens of billions of people, the emergence of the army is also necessary. After all, no matter how powerful a person is, the scope he can manage is limited. Li Qingyun needs such a large enough army. How did Death God Karl develop the Teodi civilization? Li Qingyun asked. When the Big Clock heard this question, it immediately opened a virtual projection, and the information in the projection was exactly what the Death God Karl did when developing the Teodi civilization. This is actually a simple technology output, directly providing the relevant technology to the Teodi civilization, and then these Teodi relied on these technologies to rapidly develop. There have been many cases of such development in the super god universe, but none of these cases are good. The Denner civilization, which received the advanced technology from the super god academy, directly launched an interstellar war, and in the end both civilizations were completely destroyed in this war. The Liang civilization on the side also suffered. The Kunsa civilization developed by Morgana was not destroyed, but the entire civilization launched a genocide in order to improve at the fastest speed. Countless people fought for resources in each other's fights, and those who survived were all demons with enhanced super genes in their bodies. There were originally billions of people, but in the end, only a few tens of thousands of people survived and joined the demon army. The process of the Death God Karl developing the Teodi civilization is similar. The Teodi civilization was originally a planet with a very large population, but in the end, there were less than 1 million people left. Moreover, the values and ideas of the entire civilization were distorted. They became war machines that only knew how to kill and plunder. They were either at war or on the way to war. Obviously, Li Qingyun didn't like these civilizations. Let's follow our original plan first. Li Qingyun finally chose to give up the method of quickly improving the level of civilization. Although it is a bit slow now, if it succeeds in the future, at least the original life planets can still develop normally. Li Qingyun likes the current appearance of these life planets. Banner, how is the research on the fusion project of chaos magic and supergenes going? The overall upgrade of civilization cannot be rushed now, but becoming stronger can be accelerated. The analysis of chaos magic and supergenes has been basically completed, but the complete fusion of the two will take time. Banner's virtual projection appeared. Our colleagues have proposed several methods of fusion, but the specific results still need time to calculate and verify. The three major research projects of the Super Seminary: the fusion of chaos magic and supergenes, the combination of reality gems, chaos magic and void controllers, the development and feasibility study of dimensional space. Of the three major research projects, the latter two are participated by everyone, and mainly only Li Qingyun himself is researching. But the fusion of chaos magic and super genes was something that Li Qingyun had already asked Banner to take full responsibility for and led hundreds of scientists and genius teenagers to study together long before the establishment of the super seminary. Li Qingyun wanted to become stronger, and after upgrading to the 4th generation divine body and black hole engine, the way to become stronger was naturally to fuse chaos magic. Send me all the specific ideas and plans, and I will use the big clock to calculate, Li Qingyun said, and Banner did not hesitate and immediately sent the relevant information. Li Qingyun got the specific content of these ideas and plans, and asked the big clock to start deduction and calculation. The results came out soon. Chapter 182 The Space Principle appears. The calculation result is feasible. The big clock gave the calculation result. So, can it be integrated with chaos magic? Li Qingyun was a little excited. This was what he had been looking forward to for a long time. Li Qingyun, who possessed chaos magic, was truly integrated with one of the top powers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Compared with the Aesir and the Celestials, the level of chaos magic was higher, and it was higher than the Infinity Stones. Yes, the big clock gave an accurate answer. The calculation of the big clock would never be wrong. After it confirmed the calculation results, it was absolutely impossible to make mistakes. Li Qingyun got an accurate answer, and naturally there was no doubt at the moment. Then let's start immediately. Li Qingyun was already a little impatient. Yes, the big clock agreed, and then the energy began to merge. The most difficult part of the fusion of this ability is the analysis of the data and the adaptation of the super gene. Now that the results of the analysis are available, and even the data for fusion adaptation are available, it is naturally easy to merge. When the energy is integrated into the body, the original super gene begins to change. This is a kind of energy integration, and also a fundamental change. Chaos magic penetrates into the super gene, completely combines with the super gene, and then reacts to produce a more powerful force, so that the two forces are finally converted into a more powerful force. This is not a number of 1 + 1 = 2, this is the combination of charcoal and sulfur, which will produce explosive energy. In the super seminary, the Scarlet Witch, who was resting in a corner of a garden, couldn't help but turn her head and look at where Li Qingyun was. It's chaos magic, others may not be able to perceive this energy change very clearly, but Wanda can feel it, because this is originally her power. Is Qingyun finally going to merge this power? Wanda didn't feel anything wrong with Li Qingyun's merging her chaos magic power. On the contrary, she had been looking forward to this day a long time ago. Wanda wanted to find someone who could fully understand her, so the moment Li Qingyun mastered the power of chaos magic, perhaps he would have more feelings for her. Not only the previous physical understanding, but also a complete understanding from the heart and soul. Have you thought it through? Suddenly, an ethereal voice suddenly appeared in Li Qingyun's mind. Li Qingyun, who was still feeling the influx of chaotic magic power in his body and feeling his increasingly strong body, suddenly opened his eyes wide. However, the space he was in at the moment was no longer the Super God Academy where he was originally. This was an endless starry sky. It was not the dark matter plane space in Li Qingyun's body, but another space similar to the real starry sky. The strange changes he felt in his body disappeared, and even Li Qingyun could no longer sense his originally powerful divine body. At this moment, he was like a simple soul body, a soul body floating in the universe. Who is it? Li Qingyun's face suddenly darkened, and he stared solemnly ahead. Although he could no longer sense all his power now, he subconsciously sensed that the source of the most bizarre voice was in front of him. I am one of the founders of the Great Clock, and I am also the pioneer of the Super God technology, eh? The voice of the speaker fell into a brief hesitation, and then a group of red mist appeared in front of Li Qingyun, and from the mist, a virtual outline gradually emerged. Li Qingyun recognized this appearance, because this outline and the way he appeared were almost exactly the same as the principle of the Super God Academy in the Super God Academy animation, the space principle. Now, I am just a virtual spirit floating between two different dimensions, in the endless illusion. He didn't speak strangely like in the animation. The space principle here obviously has normal language expression ability, and even his thoughts are much clearer than in the animation. It's you, Li Qingyun frowned, and many unsolved questions so far seem to have an answer immediately. I no longer belong to a new world, or even any dimension. The tone of the space principal revealed helplessness. I never thought of becoming like this, but the strange dimensional storm swallowed me when I was exploring a higher dimension, and forced me to become like this. You are the only one so far who I can actively contact and communicate with normally. The space principal did not show his appearance, but Li Qingyun could sense that the space principal must be observing him at this time. Not belonging to a new world, not belonging to any dimension, Li Qingyun felt incredible. He was just a god in the super god universe, who explored the higher dimensions of the universe and got lost in the gap between dimensions. How could he have the ability to cross dimensions? This is not how cheats are used, right? I have crossed the boundary between reality and illusion, but I cannot really break through this barrier, so I can only wander between illusion and reality forever, the space principal explained. Your explanation can be explained between the super god and Marvel universes, but it cannot be explained between the real world and the two-dimensional and three-dimensional worlds. Li Qingyun had traveled from the real world. Whether it was the super seminary or the Marvel movies, they were all just artificially created literary worlds in his world. Reality and fantasy, isn't that accurate enough? Principal Space seemed to have seen what Li Qingyun was thinking at the moment. Do you know my real situation? Li Qingyun was a little surprised. You were originally pulled here by me. Principal Space's answer made Li Qingyun stunned. What? You pulled me here? Li Qingyun was incredulous. This kind of thing was too ridiculous. A person in a fantasy world could actually pull people from the real world into the fantasy world. This was too abnormal. After a person dies, he loses everything in the real world. In this case, it's not strange to travel to other worlds. In your world, there are at least 80 million people who have fantasized about traveling like this, if not 100 million. Principal Space knew too much about it. He even looked for it for a long time during this process. However, he was between reality and fantasy, and there were not many things he could do. Even the selection of travelers was subject to many restrictions. Only those who met his conditions at that time could be drawn. But I remember that I didn't die before I traveled through time. In Li Qingyun's memory, he traveled through time after waking up from a nap. Overwork and gas poisoning, you died in a deep sleep without any perception. Since you don't remember the whole process of your death, the space principal said, and Li Qingyun's face twitched when he heard this. With his current memory, some things can be recalled immediately as long as they are slightly prompted and then deliberately thought about. I just received a gift from the girl I liked that day. I was so happy that I fried 2 poached eggs after cooking noodles. It was at that time that I forgot to turn off the gas valve. Because the fire was turned on the smallest during the frying process, that is, the opening of the gas valve was also very small, and I didn't notice it at the beginning. By the time it began to fill the entire kitchen and spread to the room, Li Qingyun had already finished his noodles and lay down to sleep. This is really, too much joy leads to sorrow. Prepare to enter the super god universe. The time and space cycle is about to begin. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183, A Way to Cross Dimensions. No matter how he died before, in general, he was dead. Maybe he was so stupid when he first traveled through time because he was smoked by gas. Well, I traveled through time because I died, and then you happened to pull me here. Li Qingyun could accept this fact because he was originally a traveler. If he could travel through time, what could be more outrageous than this? I'm just curious, you are from the super seminary, how could you pull me into the Marvel movie? Li Qingyun expressed his confusion. There were many people who died at the same time, but you were the only one who liked the super seminary. In order to force you in, I could only use all the power I could use, and the result of doing so was that I couldn't control the specific world you arrived in after traveling through time. The space principal also made such a fuss by accident. Did you give me that big clock? The general situation was understood, that is, the space principal arranged for him to travel through time, so the space principal should be similar to Celia in DNF. Then the biggest plug-in that Li Qingyun had should also be given by him. I am no longer in reality or fantasy, but somewhere in between, so I cannot interfere with the real world or affect the fantasy world. The big clock belongs to the fantasy world, so I naturally cannot mobilize it. Principal Space answered like this, but this time, His words made Li Qingyun a little confused. It was Principal Space who made him travel through time after his death, but the big clock was not given by Principal Space, so where did he get this big clock from? If you fuse chaos magic today, you will have the power to break through the dimension. I can lead you to the Super God universe. This is why Principal Space appeared today. Or, this is also the reason why Principal Space can appear. By fusing chaos magic, you will have the power to break through the dimension. Is chaos magic alone that strong? Li Qingyun felt that it was a little unlikely. Although chaos magic is strong, it is not the strongest in the Marvel world. In the universe, there are multiverse-level guys like the Five Great Gods and the Life Tribunal. Chaos magic is one of the three major forces of the universe, but even if chaos magic is exerted to the extreme, it may not be able to compete with them. Moreover, Li Qingyun had only experienced a simple fusion, and he had not even touched the Dark God book. How could he suddenly possess the power to break through the dimension? It is not that one can possess the power to break through the dimension just because one is strong, but certain specific conditions are required, the Space Principal replied. Like me, my current strength in the world of the Super God Academy is not as good as Kisha, let alone the God of Death Karl, but in the process of exploring higher dimensions, my divine body and soul went wrong, so that I was eventually stuck between the dimensions of reality and illusion. So I have a certain ability to cross dimensions. Your current strength is not the strongest in this world, but you originally mastered the power of the Super God world based on the Great Clock. After that, you merged the abilities of this world many times to make yourself stronger, and now you are merging one of the top cosmic forces in this world. You are merging the strongest powers of the two worlds together. So a special form of breaking through the dimension is formed. The Space Principal's explanation was very detailed, and Li Qingyun was in a state of reluctant acceptance of this explanation. But at the same time, he began to think about another question. If the power of different worlds is combined, the power of breaking through the dimension can be obtained. Then, can Li Qingyun find the power of other worlds and break through the dimension to go to those worlds? If he can really do it, he can not only travel between the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Super God Universe in the future, but maybe he can also go to other worlds and start a journey of the heavens. It means that I can go to the Super God Universe now, right? Compared with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Li Qingyun must like the Super God Universe more. After all, there are those beautiful angel sisters he likes most in the Super God Universe. Yes, the Space Principal answered. Can I control the time and place of crossing? Li Qingyun is mainly concerned about the issue of time. I can't take you back to the time before I became what I am now, the Space Principal said. When did you become what you are now? In the animation of Super God Academy, the Space Principal was in this form when he first appeared, and the background only introduced that he became like this when he was exploring a higher dimension. Therefore, it is certain that the Space Principal was like this before the war on Earth began, but how long before that is unknown. After the Denner Interstellar War, I began to realize the problems of the Super God Academy, and then I spent more than 2,000 years exploring higher dimensions, probably 2 or 3 years before Morgana went to Earth. I became like this, the Space Principal said at the end, and added, I just didn't expect that I had just become like this, and Karl actually started planning the War of the Gods, and now he has directly started a doomsday evolution that will slaughter the entire world. This is why the Space Principal wants to find a time traveler. It was because he mistakenly trusted the Death God Karl that he handed the big clock to the Death God Karl. Now that the Death God Karl can no longer interfere in everything in the Super God universe, he has launched the research that was originally absolutely forbidden by the Super God Academy, and even in the end he is willing to devour all the life in the universe to realize his so-called void. All of this was caused by him, and he must find a way to make up for it. 2 or 3 years before Morgana arrived on Earth, that is, 2 or 3 years before the story of the Super God Academy began, Li Qingyun determined the time point after he went to the world of the Super God Academy. At this point in time, he should be able to do many things. Okay, I will go with you on this trip, Li Qingyun agreed. There will be many uncertainties when he travels to another world again, but in order to find out why the big clock is in his hands and to explore another world, he is willing to take a risk. Then, after 48 hours, I will use my ability to open the dimensional channel again. At that time, you can use your own power to protect your body, and you can follow the dimensional channel I open to go to the Super God universe. After the Space Principal finished speaking, his form began to dissipate, and Li Qingyun's thoughts also returned to reality at this time. At this moment, he returned to the laboratory. Back to the time when he had just completed the fusion of chaos magic and super genes. Chapter 184 Preparations before crossing dimensions. Big Clock. Li Qingyun contacted the Big Clock immediately. What's wrong? The Big Clock asked. It obviously didn't know about the conversation between Li Qingyun and the Space Principal. In other words, the existence of the Space Principal has exceeded the domain of the Big Clock. He was no longer in the real space at that time, so the Big Clock could not enter with him. It seems that the biggest problem I am facing now is that I can't take the Big Clock with me after crossing. Li Qingyun will definitely go to the Super God universe, because he is more interested in that place than here. But the problem now is that if he can't cross with the Big Clock, then he will lack the biggest helper after he arrives in the Super God universe. After all, the Big Clock is the most powerful celestial computer. Even though Li Qingyun now has the 4th generation of God body, a black hole engine, and the power of chaos magic. But after crossing, if there is no Big Clock, it is afraid that it will be difficult to compete with the Death God Carl. The Space Principal asked him to go to the Super God world, and he must have let him fight against the Death God Carl. Moreover, Li Qingyun traveled through time because of the relationship with the Space Principal, and now he was directly dragged to the Super God world by the Space Principal. If he did not work for the Space Principal at all, it would be a bit unreasonable. Besides, after he got there, he could not remain absolutely neutral. Because those who he liked were all on the opposite side of the Death God Carl. I have to improve my strength before going there. Li Qingyun already had an idea in his mind. Li Qingyun already knew the way to improve his strength. Now that he has integrated chaos magic, the fastest way to improve is to find the Dark Book. But the biggest problem is the corrosiveness of the Dark Book. Scarlet Witch, as the chosen child of the Dark Book, was still corroded after she got the Dark Book and used the magic in it. Although he was stronger than Scarlet Witch in strength, his chaos magic was copied, not original, and whether the corrosive effect would be aggravated was still unknown. Let's try it first. Li Qingyun thought so in his heart, and then he started to locate Agatha Harkness's position directly. The only existing Dark Book, apart from the one hidden in the temple near the Himalayas, is in her hands. The Dark Book in the temple is too corrosive, and the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One may not be willing to let Li Qingyun touch it. Rather than having a conflict with Ancient One and the risk of backlash, it is better to find the Dark Book first to test it. Agatha, a witch who has been hiding on Earth for hundreds of years, is now one of the magicians who know chaos magic best in the world. In terms of strength, she is not as good as Ancient One and Doctor Strange, but there is no doubt that she is unique in magic. Moreover, she is too low-key. She has been changing her identity for hundreds of years, acting as a family tutor for some children with magical talents, leading them to learn magic. Agatha actually imagined getting chaos magic a long time ago, but the host with chaos magic has never appeared. So she has never shown up. But today, her days of hiding have come to an end. On today's Earth, if Li Qingyun wants to find someone, no one can avoid him. The communication network of the Big Clock has already covered the whole world. And it has found and recorded every person, even every life form and special energy body. Now, to find Agatha, Li Qingyun only needs to call up the relevant information, and then locate it directly through the Big Clock, and find it in an instant. Agatha, who was originally acting as a mentor to a young master of a big family in a manor, was sitting leisurely on a bench in the manor reading a book, and a wormhole suddenly appeared in front of her. The next moment, Li Qingyun came out. The moment she saw Li Qingyun, Agatha knew that her identity was exposed. "It's you?" Agatha was still confused. How could the dignified Lord of Shen and the founder of the Super God Academy suddenly come to find a witch like her? "It seems that you already know my situation," Li Qingyun said. "You are now the nominal ruler of the earth. It is impossible for me not to know you," Agatha said, and in fact, Li Qingyun is indeed the nominal ruler of the earth. Although he did not rule the earth forcefully, nor did he control all the countries and forces on the earth in his own hands. But from the moment the Super God Academy was founded, all this was destined. The world's top scientists and more than half of the geniuses have gathered in the Super God Academy. In the future, these people will master the knowledge provided by Li Qingyun, and use this knowledge to develop stronger technology and master stronger power. How can other people on the earth compete with such a group of people? Moreover, there has been news that Li Qingyun has created an interstellar empire called Super God Civilization in the universe. In Li Qingyun's hands, he rules over 48 life planets, and other interstellar empires in the universe have already bound the Earth to these 48 life planets. Even if the capital star of the super god civilization is the former M78 star and now Qingyun star, almost everyone tacitly agrees that the Earth is the real capital of the super god civilization. Because Li Qingyun is here, the headquarters of the Super God Academy is also here, and more than half of the scientists and genius teenagers are also here. Since we know each other, I won't waste time talking to you, Li Qingyun said. Give me the dark book in your hand. Hearing Li Qingyun's words, Agatha immediately merged the books in her hand. The book in her hand was the dark book, but she just disguised it with magic. You are a scientist, you study technology, what do you need a magic book for? Agatha asked back, and the dark book in her hand was already protected behind her back. I study technology, but who says magic doesn't belong to technology? Li Qingyun is not the kind of person who would deliberately distinguish between different attributes of energy. He can accept things like cultivating immortals with technology, let alone classifying magic into the category of science. So, you have to take it away. Agatha's face changed slightly, and the weak magic energy began to flow through her body. I advise you not to try to resist. Li Qingyun originally just wanted to take away the dark book, but if this person really wanted to do it, he wouldn't mind absorbing her magic as well, just like an American TV series. Agatha really wanted to do it, but she stopped halfway through the magic. It was obviously unwise to fight against Li Qingyun. The opponent could make the supreme sorcerer Ancient One retreat, the gods of Asgard, the universe overlord Thanos, and the Kree Empire all bowed their heads. Their strength was no longer on the same level as hers. Okay, here you go. Agatha finally gave up the resistance and threw the dark book directly to Li Qingyun. Chapter 185 Dark Book Soul Gem. After getting the dark book, Li Qingyun no longer paid attention to Agatha. Anyway, the other party posed no threat to him. After returning to the super seminary, Li Qingyun immediately began to try to use the chaos magic in the dark book. The big clock was monitoring Li Qingyun's physical condition at all times. Once there was any bad change, the big clock would immediately remind him, and Li Qingyun would stop immediately. As Li Qingyun used magic, the erosion effect soon appeared. On the fingers of Li Qingyun who used magic, there was a black energy erosion reaction. The magic of the dark book will transform a person's own energy. Once it is used too frequently, the backlash it produces will eventually cause the person who uses it to become a dark creature, the big clock reminded him. This was the conclusion it reached after real-time monitoring and analysis. The effect of this backlash does not seem to be very serious. Li Qingyun stopped using the magic of the dark book and was looking at his corroded fingers. As he mobilized the suppression of the energy in his body, the small black area that was originally corroded was restored to its original state in an instant. The power of the dark book is far inferior to your own, so your power can suppress it at will, but if you use it for a long time, and the amount of chaos magic released when using it is also very large, then this backlash will still affect you, the big clock replied. Then if I only use it as a backup and only use it at critical moments, it should be fine, right? Li Qingyun also has his own judgment. It is true that the dark book has the side effect of corroding itself, but if it can exert enough power at critical moments, then this side effect is not a concern. This is like taking drugs. It is already a matter of life and death. Even if adrenaline may overconsume the human body, it is still necessary to take it if it can. As long as it is not too frequent, with your current divine body's self-recovery ability, it will naturally be fine. After analyzing, the big clock also gave an accurate answer. Then, this trick can be used as a backup. Li Qingyun determined that the dark book can be used as one of his backup methods. Next, what else can be used to strengthen my own strength immediately? Li Qingyun began to think about other things that might improve his own strength. The big clock shows all the projects that are being studied and can be applied. As soon as Li Qingyun finished speaking, all the project information was displayed. The Chaos Magic and Super Gene Fusion project that the Super God Academy is studying, Li Qingyun has actually completed it, and he can stop this project next. The combination of reality gems, Chaos Magic and Void Controllers is now in the research stage. The research on dimensional space has not yet made a complete breakthrough in the big clock, but Li Qingyun may be able to find a new breakthrough with the help of the appearance of the space principle. In addition, there is the forging project of the king-level weaponry that has been going on Qingyun Star. The flying blade was made there, and now in addition to the flying blade, there is also a god-killing weapon that is almost completed. I only have 1.5 days left, and it seems too late to do anything else. The time agreed by the space principal with Li Qingyun is 2 days. He has been gone for 2 or 3 hours to find the Dark God book and try it out. It seemed too late to do anything else in the remaining time. So, he could only look for a few more good weapons and equipment. The weapons were naturally the god-killing weapons that Stark led everyone to build on Qingyun Star. As for the equipment, he could go to Vormir Star to look for the Soul Gem. The last time he went there, he couldn't dig out the Soul Gem and take it away. If he went there again this time, with his 4th-generation divine body and the ability of chaos magic, coupled with his research on dimensional space, he might be able to find it. He did it as soon as he thought of it, because he didn't have much time left. So, he went directly to Vormir Star. On the cliff of Vormir Star, Li Qingyun met the Red Skull again, and this time, Li Qingyun didn't hesitate at all, and waved his hand directly, and a powerful force surrounded the Red Skull. This power is chaos magic, because only chaos magic can catch the Red Skull, who is in the state of soul body at this moment. You are quite capable. You actually dared to leak my information to Supergiant and Thanos, and also prompted the Collector to attack me. Li Qingyun had long known that the Red Skull had sold his information and instigated others to deal with him. But Li Qingyun had never bothered to pay attention to it, because he didn't have the leisure to come here to settle accounts with a soul body. Now that he is here, he naturally has to do this. By the way. How is this possible? How can you attack me? The Red Skull's face was full of shock. He is a soul body, and a soul body protected by the Soul Gem. No one should be able to touch him. You are just using the power of the Soul Gem. I use the power beyond the Soul Gem, so I can naturally suppress you. As Li Qingyun said, the strength of his hand increased again, and the chaotic magic energy lingering around the Red Skull shrank again. The Red Skull felt that his whole body was squeezed, and his soul seemed to be crushed by this chaos magic. No, don't kill me, the Red Skull quickly begged for mercy. I'm just a pawn. Everything was instructed by the Soul Gem. It made me do this, the Red Skull said. He didn't care about the Soul Gem anymore, because if he didn't tell the truth, he would die here. I was teleported here by the Space Gem. For decades, I have been bound by the Soul Gem and couldn't leave. Without its permission, how could I leave this Vormir planet and leak the information? So, what I said is true. If you want to blame someone, go find the Soul Gem. Spare my life, the Red Skull said everything, and at the same time, the Soul Gem hidden in the illusion appeared again. It can't speak, but the power of the Soul Gem corresponds to the soul. It can directly convey the information it wants to express to Li Qingyun's soul, through some special induction. Are you coming here again because you are sure you can take me away, or do you just want to vent your anger? The question of the Soul Gem goes straight to the soul. Li Qingyun's clenched hands slowly loosened at this time. He doesn't care about the life or death of the Red Skull. His goal is just the Soul Stone. Chapter 186. Everything is ready. I came here to take you away. Li Qingyun turned and looked at the Soul Gem, the strangest and most special gem. This time, Li Qingyun was determined to get it. Even if you become stronger, you can't forcefully break the barrier I set. The Soul Gem flashed with light, and its meaning was conveyed to Li Qingyun, but Li Qingyun didn't care about it at all. He walked to the edge of the cliff and raised both hands at the same time. The red and black energies immediately flew out from his palms. The red one was chaos magic, and the black one was the void power of the black hole engine. Although Li Qingyun now has no anti-void power and cannot directly merge into void controller, the black hole engine has reached an extremely high level in the research of void power. Now, Li Qingyun is mainly using chaos magic, supplemented by the power of the black hole, and directly using his own power to modify the laws of the universe in this space. The ability of the Soul Gem is very special, but the Soul Gem is one of the infinite gems after all, and its existence itself cannot transcend the rules of the universe. So Li Qingyun wanted to rewrite the rules of the universe, and he did it in 2 ways, so that the Soul Gem would be completely defenseless. It was under such a modification that the original Soul Gem's indestructible defense mode was completely destroyed, and the Soul Gem hidden in the void gradually showed its original appearance. When seeing this scene, the Red Skull was dumbfounded. The Soul Gem contains cosmic power. It is a special existence that allows the Red Skull to live here for decades and allows the Red Skull to understand many secrets of the universe. But now, this Soul Gem with cosmic power has been so easily cracked in the hands of a human like Li Qingyun. With a grab of the void with his right hand, the Soul Gem fell into Li Qingyun's hand. The moment he held it in his hand, Li Qingyun completely sensed the specialness of this soul gem. It is an infinite gem specifically for the soul, and the soul is a research direction in the void in the Super God universe, so this thing can be said to have many similarities with the void technology in the Super God Academy world. Sure enough, it is necessary to get you before crossing the dimension. Li Qingyun had a hunch that this soul gem might play a huge role in the journey of the Super God Academy universe. But now, Li Qingyun has no time to study it carefully. After putting it into the dark matter plane space, Li Qingyun returned to Earth directly. He didn't even care about the situation of the Red Skull after he got the soul gem. Back to Earth, go directly to Qingyun Star through the portal to find Tony Stark. Li Qingyun will go to the Super God universe next. Although according to his estimation, when he returns from the Super God universe, he should be able to return to the original time point. That is, within a few minutes after Li Qingyun just left the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But everything must be thought of in advance, whether there will be any unexpected problems. If Li Qingyun fails to come back in time, then some things need to be arranged in advance. Just like the Super God Academy, temporary managers are needed. Moreover, Li Qingyun may not be able to leave with a big clock. Although he would not give the authority of the big clock to anyone, if they encountered some emergency situations, they might be able to let the big clock provide them with some help. To confirm that it was an emergency, it would require the permission of several specific people before it could be called. And Li Qingyun already had candidates in mind for these people. When Li Qingyun arrived at Qingyun Star, he went to the arsenal as soon as possible, where he confirmed that the god-killing weapon had been built, and then put it into his own dark matter plane space. After that, he would find another way to carry these equipment. The dark matter plane space is a unique space that Li Qingyun opened up in this universe through dark matter energy, so it will definitely not exist after crossing. In the Magic of Kamartaj, in the magic catalog of the Dark God Book, there are contents about storage magic. Li Qingyun only needs to make one at that time. Next, Li Qingyun contacted several relevant people. Hela, Wanda, Banner, Thor, Shi-Shi, Stark, Wang Haiming and Shen Li. There are a total of 8 people, among whom Shi-Shi is absolutely loyal to himself, and the relationship between Hela and the others is not very good. Wanda, Wang Haiming and Shen Li are in a special position and will not easily stand on one side. In this way, a relatively balanced state will be formed among the 8 people. Unless they encounter something that may have a major impact on the Super God civilization and the Super God Academy, it is impossible to reach a unity of thought. In addition, Li Qingyun also kept a hand. He notified Gu Yu and gave her the right to vote. The purpose was very simple. In order to prevent the 8 people in the Super God Academy from having ideological oppositions with each other and someone coming to break the deadlock when the two sides could not balance. As for why Gu Yu was chosen, it was naturally because Gu Yu's own strength was strong enough. When Li Qingyun arranged all this, the people who knew the specific situation also showed different conditions. But in the final analysis, the most worried are Hela and Wanda. These two are now considered Li Qingyun's women. Now that they know that Li Qingyun is going to another world to adventure, how can they not worry in their hearts? But they also understand that their position in Li Qingyun's mind is not enough to change Li Qingyun's determination. They also knew that this matter must be very important to Li Qingyun, otherwise he would not be willing to leave the big clock here and go alone. So, in the end, they could only spend another day with Li Qingyun, and then watch Li Qingyun leave with warm expectations. For them, as long as Li Qingyun can come back smoothly, everything else doesn't matter. Shi-Shi, the rules I set, you must implement them to the end no matter what. The last words Li Qingyun said when he left the Super God Academy were to Shi-Shi. This Shi-Shi King, who was copied by Li Qingyun after modifying the data, was the most loyal person to Li Qingyun. It was the most critical link for Li Qingyun to defend the Super God Academy and the Super God civilization. Moreover, although the total number of Shen mechas is only 278 now, their overall combat power is stronger than Hela's Undead Legion and the military power of the entire Earth. Therefore, as long as Shi-Shi holds the bottom line, the Super God Academy and the Super God civilization will not be in chaos. Chapter 187 Entering the Super God Universe. Fly out of the Super God Academy and come to the space. At this moment, in the space outside the Earth, a space that only Li Qingyun can perceive is constantly appearing. In the space, there is a phantom created by the principle of the space. This time, help me solve this world-destroying crisis, and I will send you back, The principal of the space said that he led Li Qingyun to travel through time in order to help himself solve this world-destroying disaster. Now Li Qingyun has a stronger power than the Super God universe, and he will definitely do better than he originally expected. After this trip, maybe I will master the way to walk in the dimension. I guess you don't have to worry about how to make a decision at that time, Li Qingyun said. That's what he thought. This time he went to the Super God universe. One is to find out how the big clock came into his hands. The second is because there are angels he likes there, and he wants to meet them. There is also the Super God technology. What he learned from the big clock is mainly the technology mastered by the god of death Karl, but Li Qingyun knows little about the technology mastered by the three major god-making projects and the three angel kings. Especially the ability of anti-void. If he can master it, then the combination of the four different abilities of chaos magic, reality gems, void and anti-void that he wants to study may achieve a breakthrough. But in addition to this, there is another most important goal, which is to understand the dimension. Dominating in a world and walking in the heavens are two different concepts. He is a time traveler and has seen many strange worlds in the real world. Originally, he entered the Marvel Cinematic Universe and had a very wonderful experience. If he can master the ability to travel through the heavens, perhaps he can go to any world he has liked in the past. The movie universe of the DC series, the monster universe of Godzilla, and maybe the world of Japanese comic series such as Dragon Ball and One Piece. Walking in the heavens and experiencing the myriad worlds, this kind of thing is interesting to think about. In Marvel and Super God, this is the stage of accumulating strength. If he has mastered enough strength, he must go to other worlds to walk around and see. You have mastered the peak power of two worlds at the same time, and you have indeed possessed the ability to break the dimensional limit, the space principal answered, and then, in his illusion, a hole gradually appeared. Li Qingyun knew that it should be the dimensional passage leading to the Super God universe. Li Qingyun put on the dark alloy armor and the sword of Xianxia on his back from the dark matter plane space. In addition, there is a cloth bag on his waist. This cloth bag is the storage tool created by Li Qingyun with magic, so that his weapons and equipment can be brought over smoothly. The reason why he has to wear this armor and carry the sword of Xianxia on his back is to take precautions. He's going to the Earth of the Super God universe, and it is also the period when the War of the Gods is about to break out. Although he is already a relatively powerful existence in the Super God universe with his divine body and abilities, this is a cross-dimensional journey after all, and everything is still unknown. It never hurts to be more prepared. After everything was ready, Li Qingyun flew to the dimensional channel. The moment he entered the dimensional channel, he saw strange illusions around him. It was like a time-space channel, but around this channel, there were countless thoughts and illusions flashing by. With Li Qingyun's current observation and memory, he could remember such things after just one glance. And after these thoughts and illusions gradually became clear in Li Qingyun's mind, he quickly determined their origins. This turned out to be a manifestation of the heavens and the worlds. It was like the gathering of countless human thoughts, and then displayed at once. Before Li Qingyun could get familiar with and understand these situations one by one, he suddenly felt dizzy and his eyes closed subconsciously. Too much information and the impact of the dimensional conversion forced him to enter a short dormant stage. When he woke up again, he had already arrived in another world. This is the Earth, which Li Qingyun can confirm with just a glance. Moreover, Li Qingyun is now in Juxia City, which is the location of the Super God Academy. Many people in the subsequent Xiaongbing company now live in this city. The Eye of Insight is still there. Li Qingyun can see this information and read and understand it at the first time, which is naturally because he has the Eye of Insight. Dark matter plane space. Li Qingyun tried to open his dark matter plane space. But the result was the same as he guessed. The dark matter plane space did not appear. In other words, including the big clock, his entire dark matter plane space was left in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Looking down, he saw that the armor he was wearing was still there, the Xianxia sword behind him, and the storage bag made by magic on his waist were also still there. He carefully sensed the breath on his body again, and all the abilities of the fourth generation divine body, black hole engine, chaos magic, heavenly god group factor and divine power factor were also available. It seems that only the dark matter plane space opened up in the Marvel movie can't follow. Li Qingyun determined the environment he was in and his actual situation at the moment. By reading the data, he also learned about the current time point and all the related information events around him at the first time. There are still 2 years before the story of the super seminary begins. That is to say, I still have 2 years to prepare, Li Qingyun thought, and his eyes looked around, looking for a breakthrough. He now has to find a way to open up the dark matter plane space again, but this time he doesn't have the assistance of a celestial computer like the big clock, and opening up the dark matter plane space will inevitably take a lot of time. And in this world, he can't always stay alone. Suddenly, he saw a notice on the street next to him. It was the latest police academy application notice. Any fresh graduates who meet the requirements can go and apply. Qilin from the police academy and the super seminary is a police officer, and considering her age, she should have just joined the police force not long ago when the super seminary story begins. Maybe she is in the police academy now. Thinking of this, Li Qingyun suddenly had an idea. It takes time to open up the dark matter plane space, and during this period, he also needs to find something to kill time. So why not go and get to know this girl Qilin? The new world begins, and the story of the super seminary begins next. Chapter 188 First Encounter with Qilin. Through his own ability, Li Qingyun directly registered his identity on the internet. Now, he is at the registration office of the police academy as a fresh graduate. With his set physical conditions and identity background, everything is naturally very easy. Everything will be easy after he enters the police academy. What kind of training is easy? Most of the time, he is actually studying his own situation. He originally wanted to open up the dark matter plane space again, but now, he plans to find other ways to improve his dark matter plane space. The reason is very simple. The dark matter plane space exists in the universe, which means that every time Li Qingyun goes to a different universe, he needs to open up a dark matter plane space again. And this approach often leads to not being able to carry too many things when crossing the universe plane. This time when he came to the Super God universe, for some reason, he couldn't carry the big clock himself, and his king-level arsenal had just entered the reserve stage, with only 1 or 2 sets of weapons and equipment in total. But what if he goes to other dimensions next time and the big clock is not restricted? Moreover, the dark matter plane space is not just a storage space for super soldiers. It can be said that it is the biggest reliance of super soldiers and the source of their energy and ability. By loading and storing energy in the dark matter plane space, super soldiers can perform better in battle. Therefore, he must study the dark matter plane space carefully. It would be best to find a special way to open it so that he can take it with him when he goes to any world. Suddenly, Li Qingyun remembered what he had just obtained before crossing, the soul gem that has more special abilities than other infinite gems. Thinking of this, Li Qingyun took the soul gem out of the cloth bag directly. He put it on the palm of his hand and observed it carefully. The Eye of Insight was activated, and he tried to read the information parameters in the soul gem. But just when he was concentrating on observing the soul gem, a surprised voice came over. "Hey, this gem is so strange." Li Qingyun turned around and saw a girl with a ponytail, fair skin and delicate face looking at him. Li Qingyun knew this woman. She was the person that Li Qingyun wanted to meet when he first decided to come to the police academy. She was one of the future super soldiers of the hero company, the Shen sniper, Qilin. At this moment, she didn't have the impressive figure that she had when she first appeared in the original novel, but she also had a rudimentary shape. Most importantly, she was still a little immature at this moment, and she was not the domineering and heroic policewoman in the original novel. "Who are you?" Although he had recognized Qilin, he had never met Qilin here. In order to conceal his identity, he still had to disguise himself a little. "Qilin, I came in one period earlier than you. So I can be considered your senior sister," Qilin introduced proudly. Senior sister, Li Qingyun felt a little uncomfortable. He is actually much older than Qilin, and now he looks more mature than her. He calls such an immature girl senior sister. "Don't look at me like this. I am the most outstanding student in the whole police academy, and I am also a sharpshooter who never misses a shot." Qilin's proud look is different from her mature and calm appearance in the Xiaongbing company later, but more like her appearance in the early Super God Academy. "Senior sister is really amazing. I have never been good at shooting. You have to help me more in the future," Li Qingyun said. He wanted to deliberately distract Qilin's attention, so that he could put away the soul gem in his hand. But Qilin didn't care about what he said, or she didn't think about anything else. She saw Li Qingyun was about to put away the gem in his hand, and immediately interrupted him. "Why is your gem so precious? You are not willing to let me take a closer look?" Qingyun is a student of the police academy, and she is one of the best. Her observation ability is still very good. Li Qingyun's slight move to put away the soul gem was immediately discovered by her. No, Li Qingyun shook his head, and then handed the soul gem to Qingyun. If she didn't notice it, he would have put it away. But since the other party has already set his sights on it, if he deliberately didn't show it to her, it would arouse her suspicion. Qingyun looked at the orange gem in Li Qingyun's hand. Although Qingyun didn't know much about gems, the one in front of her was unusual at first glance. Not only was the color very rare, but there seemed to be a constant glow coming out of the gem. This gem, Qingyun could clearly feel that this gem was very special. This gem was given to me by an old man, who said that there was a huge secret hidden in it, but I still don't understand it now. Since everything has been discovered, just tell the problem directly. For things like this, if you tell it normally, no one will believe it. What? Qingyun was confused. How could this plot be so similar to the plot in the movie? Are you kidding? Qingyun could only attribute all this to Li Qingyun joking. I'm telling the truth. I've been trying to figure out the secret of this gem. People and things in this world are so strange. When you tell the truth, people often don't believe it. But the more you try to cover up, the more they will dig deeper and want to know all the truth and secrets. Okay, if you don't want me to see it, then I won't. Why are you trying to coax me by saying this? Qingyun pushed Li Qingyun's hand back. Li Qingyun didn't think much about anything else and directly put the soul gem away. I heard that a genius student came to the school these days. He can learn everything at once, and his gun skills and physical skills are all top-notch. You are also new here, so you should know who he is, right? Qingyun sat down next to Li Qingyun. For some reason, she felt quite happy to be with Li Qingyun. I am, Li Qingyun replied with a smile. You? Qingyun looked at Li Qingyun with some suspicion. Don't believe it, Li Qingyun asked back. You don't look like a well-trained warrior, Qingyun said. If you don't believe me, I can't help it, Li Qingyun spread his hands. How about we have a competition? Qingyun's competitive spirit came up. It would be a bit too much for me to compete with you. Li Qingyun is a super warrior with a 4th-generation divine body and a black hole engine. Although Qingyun is talented now, she is still just an ordinary person. No matter how she competes, she can't win. If you say so, I really have to compete with you. Qingyun was just talking casually at first, but now, she has really decided to compete with Li Qingyun. Chapter 189 Social Hooligan Liu Chuang. Despite Qingyun's insistence, Li Qingyun went to the shooting training ground with her. We each have 10 bullets. Whoever gets the highest number of rings wins. Qingyun handed the 10 bullets to Li Qingyun. Shooting was Qingyun's best skill. She had never lost in this field in the police academy. Okay, Li Qingyun took the bullets and loaded them into the magazine one by one. Qingyun returned to the firing window next to her and began to prepare. There were many other students at the shooting training ground. They were all excitedly observing in the observation room separated by glass windows. This new guy actually wants to compete with Qingyun in shooting. He really doesn't know his own limitations, that's right. Sister Qingyun is a shooting genius. Even instructor Wang said that she has the talent to become the best sniper on the battlefield. Qingyun is good, but Li Qingyun is not bad either, that's right. In the training ground yesterday, he also showed excellent talent. Instructor Li called him a natural-born soldier. The onlookers gradually formed two factions, one supporting Qingyun and the other supporting Li Qingyun. Among them, there were obviously more people supporting Qingyun. After all, they were old students, and Qingyun's shooting skills had been famous throughout the police academy for a long time. Li Qingyun was a newcomer. Although he also showed amazing strength, other people didn't know it except for the students who were training with him. Bang! The shooting began. Qingyun fired one shot after another, and almost every shot hit the bullseye. Li Qingyun also fired, but he did not fire intermittently, but fired 10 shots in a row, and every shot hit the bullseye. Under normal circumstances, it is difficult for a person to shoot 10 shots in a row and still hit the target, because the moment the bullet is fired, there will be a recoil force. Under this recoil force, it is impossible for the hand to remain motionless. Since the hand has moved, it needs to be adjusted to return to the aiming position, so even a sharpshooter like Qingyun will have a certain interval in the frequency of shooting. The people watching the scene were all students from the police academy, and they could see and understand everything clearly. At that moment, everyone present was stunned. Even Qingyun was shocked after noticing the rhythm of Li Qingyun shooting and the score. She took off the earmuffs on her head and came directly to Li Qingyun. Looking at his score, her face was full of disbelief. "How did you do it?" Qilin asked in disbelief. "Just enough strength," Li Qingyun smiled. "He is a fourth-generation divine body. The force generated by the pistol, when firing, is like an ordinary person playing with a water gun. There is no impact at all, so he can naturally control it steadily. This can't be done just by strength, right?" Qilin still found it hard to believe, because even the strongest person couldn't completely ignore the recoil of a pistol, and Li Qingyun just fired with one hand. "Nothing special, just practice makes perfect," Li Qingyun could only reply to her with this sentence. "You have to teach me," Qilin said with a firm look in her eyes. She was a genius in shooting. She knew that she had lost this time, but winning or losing was not important to her. What was important was that she had to understand why she lost, so she wanted Li Qingyun to teach her this move. "I can't teach you that." Li Qingyun relied entirely on the advantages of a super soldier. "It would be difficult for you to teach Qilin the technique." Qilin was a Shen sniper. Her talent in shooting could be said to be unparalleled. In the first battle of Xi'an City, she single-handedly killed the sniper of the Teodi Legion. In the battle between gods and gods, when Liu Chuang and others were surrounded, she became the only one who escaped the ambush of the demon army, and later, together with several ordinary soldiers, she killed a squad of demon soldiers and rescued Liu Chuang and others. In Hero's Company too, she also went alone to fight a group of low-level demons. As the only first-generation super soldier in the Hero's Company, her record is not even comparable to the second and third-generation super soldiers such as Rui Menmen, He Weilin, and Zhao Xin. Liu Chuang's team was able to go so smoothly in the story of Hero's Company, and it can be said that she has taken a lot of credit. "I don't care, anyway, if you don't teach me, I will pester you every day." Qilin didn't know what Li Qingyun relied on, she only knew that Li Qingyun defeated herself. In the following time, she kept pestering Li Qingyun as she said at this moment, and as long as she had time, she would immediately ask Li Qingyun to teach her shooting. Li Qingyun was also helpless, but he really couldn't find any better skills to teach Qilin than what she originally had, so he could only keep wasting time with her. And this time took almost 2 years. Qilin graduated, and Li Qingyun also graduated early. The two were arranged to work in the police station of Juxia City as trainee police officers. In fact, the instructor originally wanted Li Qingyun to be a special police officer because Li Qingyun's grades were so good. But Li Qingyun was not interested in this. His purpose of entering the police academy could be said to be to find something to kill time, and then hide his identity by the way. After graduating with Qilin and entering the same police station, he would naturally have some contact with Zhao, Liu Chuang and others when they appeared. The most important thing is Zhao, who has the power of anti-void in his body, and anti-void is one of the main directions that Li Qingyun has been studying. The fusion of the 4 abilities of Reality Gem, Chaos Magic, Void and Anti-Void is what Li Qingyun discovered in the process of studying how to make himself stronger, and it is the most likely to break through the limit. Just now, Li Qingyun, who has combined Chaos Magic and Black Hole Engine, has the ability to break through the dimension. "You can be a special police, why do you come here to be a policeman?" Qilin has been pestering Li Qingyun for more than a year, and the relationship between the two can be regarded as very good. "Special police will only take action when there is a major incident, but I prefer to punish evil and promote good on weekdays." This is just an excuse Li Qingyun made up. Punish evil and promote good? Come to find these little hooligans, Qilin didn't understand. At this moment, she was looking through the car window, observing several people in the alley. Li Qingyun was also looking at those people. To be precise, he was looking at the man in red flowery clothes among these people. Liu Chuang, one of the 3 major god-making projects of the Super God Academy, is the carrier of the Noxing War God gene. "We are policemen. We can catch little hooligans and participate in major events in the future. We don't have to be subject to so many restrictions, right?" Li Qingyun said, and his inside eyes were already analyzing Liu Chuang's physical data. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190, Zhao. The super gene is not activated. Li Qingyun only took a glance and knew the data in Liu Chuang's body. The No-Star War God gene, once activated, can have a third-generation divine body, and the strength of the divine body can be immune to all attacks below the flame-level weapons, possessing the power to destroy the world. The super gene can drive No-Star's highest tech weapon, the No-Star Battle Axe. This No-Star War God's gene is so powerful, as long as it awakens, it is a real god. It is completely different from the super warriors like Qianghua and Qilin who need to upgrade many times later. Li Qingyun looked at Liu Chuang's data and couldn't help but sigh. When he became a super warrior, it was a blank slate. There was no superpower, no special physique, and it was impossible to have matching weapons. But Liu Chuang is different. His entire super gene database is equipped with everything. No-Star has spent tens of thousands of years studying the No-Star War God project and has already equipped him with a complete set of things. As long as the genes in Liu Chuang's body awaken, these things can be obtained immediately. He is the same as Jezzailin, the power of the galaxy. Li Qingyun still clearly remembered that when Jezzailin had just awakened his super gene, he could directly enter the dark matter plane space, and the dark alloy armor had been matched to Jezzailin at that time. It can be seen that God-level genes such as Galaxy Power and No-Star War God have already been equipped with a complete dark matter plane space before their genes began. The three major god-making projects were studied by the Super God Academy for tens of thousands of years, and then the Dexing, No-Star and Liang civilizations invested tens of thousands of years in research and development. Their genes are not only of extremely high level and have extremely strong abilities, but even the dark matter plane space they match has already been designed very well. Damn it, this guy dared to bully a woman? Qilin suddenly became furious. Li Qingyun looked up and retracted his thoughts, only to find that Liu Chuang and his two younger brothers had forced a girl into the alley. This plot is clearly the beginning of the heroic company. Unexpectedly, Li Qingyun had just come out of the police academy and joined the police force, and it was at this time. Don't be in a hurry, Li Qingyun stopped Qilin who wanted to get off the car. This was the first time Jezzailin and Liu Chuang met, and it was also the time when they activated their super genes. Li Qingyun couldn't let Qilin mess it up. They all started bullying the little girl, so why are you still in a hurry? Don't forget, you are a policeman, and it is your duty to protect the weak. Qilin was a little angry. As a policeman, how could she turn a blind eye to such a thing? Don't worry, nothing will happen, Li Qingyun persuaded, and at this time, a young man suddenly rushed up, picked up a brick on the ground, and slapped it towards Liu Chuang. However, this young man was not good at fighting at first glance. Although he was swinging the brick, he didn't hit the vital part at once. Liu Chuang was a gangster, and he had experienced many things like fighting with people on the street. He was hit by someone, but he didn't hit the vital part, so he didn't suffer much damage. In turn, he hit the young man's temple with a fierce elbow, knocking him down instantly. This reaction speed is not slow. Worthy of being the super gene carrier of the god of war of No-Star, Li Qingyun admired in his heart, and at the same time, a wave of dark energy appeared in this area. This dark energy mobilized the energy of nearby stars, which directly integrated into Jezzailin body and activated his super gene. This kind of fluctuation is invisible to ordinary people, but Li Qingyun can see it clearly with his insightful eyes. No, someone is going to die, I can't just ignore it. Qilin pulled out her pistol and was about to go up. Li Qingyun had no choice but to rush over and hold her down. These two people are not ordinary people, you take a look first, Li Qingyun said, but Qilin didn't understand at this time. What do you mean they are not ordinary people? They clearly look like ordinary people, and the punch just now was directly hit on the young man's temple. This position is one of the vital points of the human body and can easily cause death. Believe me, I won't be wrong, Li Qingyun said, and facing the struggling Qilin, he could only grab her hands so that she couldn't open the car door and get out directly. Qilin was being held by Li Qingyun, and she couldn't get out even if she wanted to. Li Qingyun quickly spoke up and continued to persuade her, don't be impatient. If something really happens, I can't just ignore it. Qilin's originally excited mood slowly recovered after hearing what Li Qingyun said. However, after recovering, Qilin suddenly found that the distance between the two of them was extremely close at this time. Not only were they holding hands, but their bodies were also very close. They were all young people, and it was the time when their love was easily moved. Moreover, after spending nearly 2 years together, Qilin actually had a good impression of Li Qingyun in her heart. Seeing this at the moment, Qilin couldn't help but blush. She could only turn her eyes to the window and continue to pay attention to the situation outside. It was to distract her attention, and at the same time, she was also afraid that something unexpected would happen outside. After all, 2 policemen were at the scene, watching the fight happen but not stopping it. If something really happened, it would be difficult to explain to the higher-ups if they knew about it. At the same time, in the alley outside, Qilin saw the young man who had climbed up again and was obviously not at all abnormal, and knew that what Li Qingyun said was correct. I also saw his counterattack against Liu Chuang, which was actually a kick that kicked Liu Chuang several meters away. The whole person lay on the ground motionless for more than 10 seconds. The young man who kicked him was the galaxy-powered Zhiaolin. This was a fateful battle between the 2 strongest super warriors of Dexing and Noxing. But this was also the only time that the 2 sides were in a state of hostility. Even if there were fights later, it was just a mutual exchange during training. Looking at Liu Chuang, who stood up intact again, Qilin was a little confused. The shyness she had originally felt when being pressed by Li Qingyun also disappeared completely. Are the physical fitness of these 2 people a little too good? Qilin also found that one was hit hard on the temple and the other was kicked several meters away, but they both stood up intact again. If it were an ordinary person, they would almost die, right? This is just the beginning, Li Qingyun said. And then there was a fight between Liu Chuang and Zhiaolin. Dismantling the air conditioner with bare hands and breaking floor tiles with his head, this series of actions left Qilin dumbfounded. Chapter 191, Genetic Data of the Galaxy Force. It's almost done, let's go. Both of them have awakened their super genes, and the fight is getting more and more intense. Li Qingyun knows it's time to show up. The 2 got out of the car, and before going out, they took out an alarm device and put it on the roof. They drove a civilian car, and put the alarm device to show their identity. Otherwise, Liu Chuang and the others saw that there were police here, so how could they dare to do such a thing as molesting girls? Looking at Li Qingyun and Qilin in police uniforms, especially seeing the pistol in Qilin's hand, these 2 guys who have awakened super genes but still think like ordinary people immediately admitted their fear. Liu Chuang even squatted on the ground with his hands on his head. The others go first, you 2 stay, Li Qingyun pointed at Zhiaolin and Liu Chuang and said. They are also involved, why are they let go? Qilin looked at Liu Chuang's 2 younger brothers. Then lock it up and put it aside, and wait for other colleagues to come and take it away, Li Qingyun said, and then added, there is not much space in our car, so we can only take 2 away. Qilin nodded casually when she heard him say this. But she actually understood that Li Qingyun did it on purpose. He must know something about Zhiaolin and Liu Chuang, so he deliberately wanted to separate these 2 people. Just now in the car, Li Qingyun stopped her from taking action, which was clearly a problem. So, Qilin also wanted to see what Li Qingyun wanted to say to these 2 people. When other colleagues arrived, Qilin and Li Qingyun took Liu Chuang and Zhiaolin and drove to the police station in their car. You 2 should be the Galaxy Power and the No-Star God of War, right? Li Qingyun did not avoid Qilin, because he knew that Qilin had actually noticed his abnormality at the moment. How did you know? Zhiaolin and Liu Chuang asked in unison. I know, that's because I'm also a super soldier, Li Qingyun said, and Zhiaolin and Liu Chuang were stunned when they heard him. Qilin, who was driving on the side, was a little confused at this time. Super soldier? What is a super soldier? Qilin asked. Super soldier, that is, a soldier with superpowers. In fact, Qilin, you are also a super soldier, but your ability has not yet awakened, Li Qingyun said, and his words were even more incredible to Qilin. In fact, the 3 people present except Li Qingyun were equally confused. Zhiaolin and Liu Chuang had awakened the super gene, but they only knew that there was a strange voice in their heads, and they also had an invincible body and powerful strength, but they didn't know anything else. The ability I awakened is called the Eye of Insight. I can see the information on you and understand your situation, Li Qingyun explained. Eye of Insight, Zhiaolin and Liu Chuang subconsciously looked at each other, but as soon as they saw each other, they immediately turned their heads away. The 2 of them are now in a hostile relationship, and the super genes in their bodies were even more hostile in the past. Now, they don't like each other. Zhiaolin, right? Put your head over here, let me take a closer look, Li Qingyun called out. Zhiaolin didn't feel suspicious when he heard this, and he just stretched his head over. The clear and stupid eyes of this college student were very clear in Zhiaolin's eyes. He completely trusted Li Qingyun. Li Qingyun stretched out his hand and pressed it on Jezailan's forehead. Start the dark matter energy analysis and solve the super gene data in the other party's body. Data analysis in progress. Super gene code, galaxy power, analyzing the unique properties of galaxy power, anti-voidability in progress. Li Qingyun has been studying anti-void. But in the past, he could only use the part of data recorded in the database of the big clock that Sumerly stole. Because of the incomplete information, Li Qingyun had spent several years analyzing when he was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but still could not get an accurate result. But now, through direct contact with Jezailan, Li Qingyun has finally gradually completed this information data. The following research and analysis work will surely proceed more smoothly. You are not bad, you are the legendary savior. Li Qingyun let go of Jezailan's head. He had done what he should do, and there was no need to waste time with him. Savior, Jezailan was a little confused, but he was even more excited. Savior, how many people in this world have dreamed of becoming a savior? Yes, your super gene code is called Galaxy Power. It is the strongest and most special one among the 3 major god-making projects. According to the description of your super gene, you will grow into the supreme god in this universe in the future. What Li Qingyun said at this moment is indeed the setting of Galaxy Power. Possessing anti-voidability is the ultimate weapon to fight against ultimate fear in the future, and Galaxy Power Jezailan, according to his genetic setting, has the potential to grow into a god that surpasses any god known in the universe at this stage in the future. However, this is just a setting. And it is a setting at this stage. As the Death God Carl researches new technologies, if the Galaxy Power does not improve accordingly, the final result will still be elimination. Coupled with the appearance of Li Qingyun, everything has changed again. Li Qingyun himself only has the super gene of the space principle, but when he was in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, he integrated the powerful forces in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Aesir, the Celestials, and Chaos Magic, these powers are stronger than one another, and each of them can be ranked among the top in the abilities of super soldiers. Today, Li Qingyun has all these powers at the same time, and he also has the 4th generation of Divine Body and Black Hole Engine, the 2 most advanced technologies in the current Super God universe. It is unlikely that Jezailan wants to surpass Li Qingyun. If Li Qingyun can still get the big clock back here, his strength can even directly crush the whole field. Supreme God? Just him? Liu Chuang was not convinced. In his opinion, Jezailan was a coward, a scumbag who was beaten by him. Just this guy, he actually wants to become the Supreme God and crush himself? Come over here and let me touch it. Since Jezailan did this, Liu Chuang naturally had to do the same. Liu Chuang did not hesitate. With a cutoff in front of him, he naturally had to let Li Qingyun see it. Li Qingyun also touched his head with his hand, but did not use the dark matter computer to analyze Liu Chuang's data. Because there was no need. Well, very good, at least on the same level as him. Li Qingyun nodded in approval. That's right, how could I be weaker than him? Liu Chuang was very confident. How about you touch mine too? Qilin asked curiously. At this moment, the 3 of them turned their heads and looked over at the same time. Why did these words, spoken by such a beautiful girl like Qilin, always feel that there was something wrong? Chapter 192, even though you're a super soldier, you still have to go to jail? Finally, Li Qingyun showed it to Qilin. They all came from Shen civilization. In fact, Li Qingyun could perceive Qilin's super gene data most easily. Moreover, the super warriors of the Denner civilization, such as Galaxy Power and No Star Wars, were awakened through the energy of Rena's sunlight. Qilin's super gene was awakened after being attacked by the scouts of the Teodi Legion. When Li Qingyun touched Qilin's forehead with his right hand, he directly mobilized the dark energy in his body and began to inject it into Qilin's body. In the entire animation of Super God Academy, the name of Shen civilization is very loud, but few characters have appeared. Among the more active super warriors, there are only Qilin and Huilin from Shen civilization. The rest, such as the Space Principal, is simply an NPC. In addition to appearing twice to answer questions for Reina and Dukayang Wei, he basically only exists in memories and legends. In addition, although the Galaxy Force was originally called the Shen Force, it was developed and manufactured on Dexing. Moreover, although the super genes in the body have the genes of Shen civilization, they also have multiple genes of angels and Dexing people. Therefore, The Galaxy Force and Shen Force are not real Shen civilization warriors. There was a man named Jess before, but he was just a piece of data recorded in the big clock. It was just that the Super Seminary summoned him as a temporary instructor of the Xiangbing Company. Wait, Li Qingyun was stunned for a moment, because he suddenly realized that he seemed to have missed a key point. Jess was a piece of data recorded in the big clock, but the Super Seminary was able to summon him. Does this mean that the Super Seminary is actually connected to the big clock? It seems that I have to go to the Super Seminary and find the bald principal to find out the specific situation. If the Super Seminary is still connected to the big clock, then perhaps Li Qingyun can find a way to seize control of the big clock through the Super Seminary. What's wrong with you? Qilin parked the car on the side of the road and looked at Li Qingyun anxiously. Li Qingyun, who had just been helping her to investigate the super gene situation, was now frozen in place, as if he had been possessed by a demon. Nothing, I just felt that the super gene in your body is of the same origin as mine, and I was excited for a moment. Li Qingyun saw Qilin's anxious look and also collected his thoughts. My super gene is a super gene from the Shen civilization, and the one in your body is the same, Li Qingyun said, and then began to introduce further. It's just that the super gene in your body has not been upgraded or transformed in any way. It belongs to the first generation of super genes. Not only does it not have a dark matter plane space, it doesn't even have a super gene system. Li Qingyun suddenly felt that Qilin was quite pitiful. At the beginning of the Super God Academy, she could be said to be a very popular character, with good appearances and good performance. But from beginning to end, she was the one with the worst super gene level in the team. Jezailan and Liu Trang had just awakened and had a super gene system, and also a dark matter plane space. Qilin didn't know what a super gene system was until the third episode of Heroes Company 3, and even her divine body had never been upgraded. The only upgrade was probably when the gun in her hand was replaced with a flame-class sniper rifle. Super gene system? What is that? Qilin asked in confusion. It's an auxiliary system in your body. It can help you to play a better combat power in battle, and it can also provide technical support in your self-improvement process, Li Qingyun said. Is it the old immortal who spoke in the dream? Liu Trang remembered everything that happened when he was unconscious, and the voice he heard. Yes, that's the super gene system, Li Qingyun answered affirmatively. Isn't this a bit unfair? Jezailan, the galactic power representing justice and morality, was actually concerned about this at this time. There is no absolute fairness in this world, Li Qingyun said. Qilin, let's go back to the police station. It's time to send them back to record their statements. Li Qingyun sat back in his original position and fastened his seat belt. Okay, Qilin agreed, then started the car again and drove towards the police station. No, everyone is already a super soldier, why are you taking them to the police station? Liu Trang was speechless. He thought that he and the two policemen were super soldiers, and this time he didn't have to go to the police station. He never thought that these two had just chatted with him so enthusiastically, and in the blink of an eye, they were going to take them to the police station. This change of face was too fast. You are a super soldier, but you did make a mistake, Li Qingyun said. Since you broke the law, you must be punished. No one's face is useless, Qilin added. I say you two really don't give any face. After all, you are companions. Maybe we will save the world together in the future. Liu Trang was still trying to fight for himself, but Li Qingyun and Qilin turned a deaf ear to it. To them, it was useless for Liu Trang to say anything. This was his call, so he had to do it. Soon their car arrived at the police station, and the two were taken to the police station for questioning. Li Qingyun didn't like to do this kind of thing, so Qilin was basically in charge. Not long after, two strange people came in. One of them was wearing a black suit and sunglasses, and the other was a woman with red hair and a very good figure. The inheritor of the space-time gene, Du Qiangwei. The three most famous god-making projects in the world of Super God Academy are the power of the galaxy, the god of war of no star, and the light of the sun. But in addition to these, there are actually some very special super gene systems. For example, the space-time gene that King Liangbing of Apocalypse spent tens of thousands of years to research, and the fighting Buddha that teacher Wu of Super God Academy spent tens of thousands of years to create. Of course, Huayi is also in this category. The god of death Karl spent tens of thousands of years studying the void, and the first research result was installed on Huayi, allowing Huayi to have a black hole engine and break the balance of the universe in one fell swoop. This is Time and Space Rose, the tactical core of the heroic company, the person that the Demon King Morgana tried so hard to get, and even sacrificed himself for her in the end. Li Qingyun looked at Du Qiangwei, who came in, thinking in his heart. And his obviously different gaze from others also immediately attracted Du Qiangwei's attention. However, Du Qiangwei didn't know what Li Qingyun was looking at, and just thought he was another guy who was tempted by beauty, so she snorted coldly and ignored him. This is embarrassing. Li Qingyun shook his head helplessly, and then turned around to watch Qilin interrogate Liu Chuang. Chapter 193 Scouts of the Teodi Legion. Wait a minute, Du Qiangwei and AG brought Jezailan out, and when they returned to where Li Qingyun was, AG stopped them. What's wrong? Du Qiangwei looked at AG in confusion. The intelligence from above said that there seems to be something wrong with them. AG looked at Li Qingyun and Qilin while speaking. Of course there is a problem, they are both super soldiers. Jezailan heard what AG said and immediately added. What did you say? Now, AG and Du Qiangwei were both surprised. It was good enough for Jezailan to know that he was a super soldier, but he actually said that Li Qingyun and Qilin were also super soldiers, and even they didn't know this information. You know, they came from General Dukeo, and Dukeo was the person in charge of the Black Great Wall and the manager of all the super soldiers on the earth. Dukeo was not sure about something. How could Jezailan be sure? They are Li Qingyun and Qilin. Li Qingyun has the ability to see other people's information, so he recognized me and that gangster Liu Chuang as super soldiers at first sight, Jezailan said, and Du Qiangwei and AG fell into deep thought when they heard him. Seeing other people's information should be the ability of dark energy analysis. The question is it possible for people who have just awakened super genes to have this ability? Du Qiangwei looked at AG beside her in confusion, but AG, who has been with Dukeo for a long time to handle these matters for Dukeo, actually doesn't know much about super soldiers. He is a field staff, and the real core information can only be accessed by technicians like Lianfeng, so how can he understand it? So, he just looked at me, not because. Du Qiangwei was embarrassed to say more after saying this. Not because of what? Jezailan looked at Du Qiangwei in confusion. Nothing. Du Qiangwei skipped the topic directly. It was really a bit embarrassing to say these words directly. Let's go first. We'll see what General Dukeo says later. It won't be too late for us to deal with it later, AG said, and then he took Jezailan out of the police station. Du Qiangwei followed closely, but before she left, she looked back at Li Qingyun and Qilin. Compared to Jezailan and Liu Chuang, these two people are obviously better, at least they are not ugly. You have been looking at those two people. Is there something wrong? Qilin had actually noticed Li Qingyun's attention to Du Qiangwei. The red-haired woman is also a super soldier, but compared to Jezailan and Liu Chuang, she seems to have a better understanding of her own abilities. Judging from her appearance when she came, she doesn't seem to be an ordinary person, Li Qingyun said. I saw that they seem to be from a special department. Qilin was looking at the screen in front of her, which had some information records when Jezailan was taken away. Oh, it seems that the country has known about these things for a long time. Maybe it won't be long before we have to get involved with them, Li Qingyun said. Never mind, we'll get off work soon. Let's go eat clay pot noodles. I haven't eaten it for a long time. I heard that a new one opened in the snack street. It's quite authentic, Qilin said. She had already finished interrogating Liu Chuang, and Liu Chuang had been taken to the police station by other colleagues. It wasn't long before the end of get off work. Okay, Li Qingyun agreed. Clay pot noodles are a hometown delicacy of Li Qingyun. Li Qingyun liked to eat it when he was in the police academy, so every time Qilin wanted to go out with Li Qingyun, she would use this as an excuse. Li Qingyun was naturally happy to accept it. After get off work, the two drove to the snack street, but halfway, they suddenly received an emergency notice. Someone was making trouble, and had already attacked and damaged several police cars. Even the military had begun to send people to reinforce. Now, the police are mobilizing all personnel to go to the scene for support. The moment he heard the communication, Li Qingyun understood that this was a scout from the Teodi Corps, a Teodi warrior who had been transformed into a pure metal body. Qilin turned around and headed towards the scene without saying a word. Don't get out of the car when we get to the scene, Li Qingyun said. Although he knew that Qilin would not die, he still didn't want to see Qilin get out of the car and be attacked. The feeling of a bullet piercing the chest was not pleasant. That won't work. How can I be so greedy for life and afraid of death? Qingyun didn't know the real reason why Li Qingyun didn't let her get out of the car. She just thought that Li Qingyun didn't want to put herself in danger. You must listen to me this time, Li Qingyun said, and at this moment, they were not far from the scene. They could already see the chaos ahead, and many soldiers began to set up alerts and protective measures around them. The car stopped at the periphery, and Li Qingyun got out first to understand the situation. But at this moment, Qingyun opened the car door and got out. She didn't answer Li Qingyun before, but she didn't want to be a coward, so when she arrived at the scene, she immediately pulled out her pistol and got out of the car. When Li Qingyun saw her get out of the car, he immediately tried to stop her, but a beam of light had already shot towards Qingyun. Now, Qingyun had no way to avoid it. Really, Li Qingyun was helpless. The only way now was to expose more of his strength. In just a flash, Li Qingyun came directly in front of Qingyun. He hugged Qingyun and the red laser shot at her back. It didn't penetrate directly as expected. When the laser landed on Li Qingyun's back, it only produced a wisp of black smoke, burning his clothes, but did not cause any harm to Li Qingyun himself. This is the fourth generation of divine body. Unless it is a flame-level armor-piercing bullet or a god-killing weapon, ordinary weapons cannot destroy its body's defense. Qingyun, are you okay? Qingyun reacted and immediately touched behind Li Qingyun. After finding that there was no blood, the fear and worry on Qingyun's face were reduced. I told you not to get off the car, why didn't you listen? Li Qingyun said. He knew that he would not be in trouble. However, the super-strong defense of his fourth-generation divine body would soon be known to the people of the Black Great Wall. In addition to the previous eye of insight, Ducao should have guessed that his identity was extraordinary. I'm sorry, Qingyun lowered her head. At this moment, she really knew she was wrong. Thinking of the scene just now, thinking of Li Qingyun actually standing in front of her without hesitation. At this moment, Qingyun not only regretted not listening to Li Qingyun, but was also extremely moved. The feelings that had been nurtured in the past 2 years had completely erupted at this moment. Chapter 194, A Stone Stirs Up 1,000 Waves. Li Qingyun didn't care what Qingyun was thinking. Since the scout sent by the Teoti had already heard himself, there was no need for it to go back. You stay here first, Li Qingyun said, and then rushed forward. Qingyun, what are you doing? Qingyun was about to stop him, but she saw Li Qingyun jump directly and reached dozens of meters away. In just this step, Li Qingyun entered the main battlefield from the edge, and a silver sword appeared in his hand. Qingyun was really stunned. It was shocking enough that Li Qingyun survived a laser, and now he could jump dozens of meters and even conjure a long sword out of thin air. Is this something a normal person can do? Even a super soldier should not be able to do this, right? The key is that he is so skilled. On the battlefield ahead, Li Qingyun had already come directly in front of the Teoti mecha. Who are you? The moment Li Qingyun appeared, the Teoti mecha stopped unconsciously and looked directly at Li Qingyun. He could feel that the human who suddenly appeared in front of him was different from the other soldiers holding guns. A minion, there is no need to know my name, Li Qingyun said, and chopped down with his right sword. Although the sword was chopped from a distance, a white sword light appeared above the Teoti mecha and chopped down directly from his head. In just a moment, the Teoti mecha was directly split in half. Even the tank shells could not seriously damage the Teoti mecha, but it died so easily under Li Qingyun's sword. The military soldiers who were still attacking all around stopped at this time. They turned around and looked at Li Qingyun, and felt that this young man suddenly became like a fairy, like the heroes in martial arts novels, and like the immortals in fantasy novels. It's just that this police uniform looks a bit out of place. Go back and tell Ducao that the super seminary should be opened, otherwise it will be too late if you wait any longer. Li Qingyun turned around and said to a soldier beside him. General Ducao? Do you know General Ducao? This soldier came from the Giant Gorge. He was one of the few soldiers who knew Ducao's name. I have other things to do, so I'll leave this to you. Li Qingyun put away the Skyshia sword, turned around and walked towards Qingyun. When she saw Li Qingyun coming back, Qingyun was still at a loss. She suddenly realized that Li Qingyun was not as simple as she thought. In the past 2 years, the colleague who had such a close relationship with her might have a more mysterious identity. Let's go. Li Qingyun came to Qingyun and patted her shoulder gently. Oh, Qingyun reacted and then returned to the car. However, this time she sat in the co-pilot seat and Li Qingyun drove instead. It was really that her mind was still in a daze, and she couldn't drive at this time. Li Qingyun drove away from the scene and continued to drive in the direction of the snack street. It won't be long before the interstellar war of the super seminary will begin, and a peaceful life like this will soon be destroyed. By then, not to mention the snack street, even the entire city will be destroyed. Now, enjoy it while you can. All the way to the snack street, sit down at the roadside table of the clay pot noodle shop. Until then, Qilin finally reacted. She looked at Li Qingyun in front of her, who was the same as before, but her heart was full of doubts. Are you the legendary peerless soldier king or hidden master? Qilin is a policeman, and she likes to train and punish criminals on weekdays. She rarely reads online novels, but it doesn't matter, she knows some related things. I think too much, I just know the fact that I am a super soldier in advance, and I have contacted the teacher who gave me the superpower, Li Qingyun said. His strength today has been exposed. Next, the super seminary and the Black Great Wall will come to find him. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he has to find an identity for himself. And the best identity is naturally the student of the space principle. Li Qingyun was summoned by the space principle and traveled through time. The manufacturing of the big clock and the many data recorded in the big clock are also the credit of the space principle. Li Qingyun said that he is the student of the space principle, which should be barely considered. If they have to go to the space principle to confirm, it should not be exposed. After all, the space principle is the one who summoned him. He can't betray himself at this time, right? Teacher? What teacher? Qilin asked curiously. Space principle, he is the founder of the super seminary. Soon, the people of the super seminary should come to us, and then we will go in to study together, Li Qingyun said, but at this time, a helicopter in the distance had already flown towards this side. With everything Li Qingyun did today, how could Duko wait until later to come? After he understood the situation, he rushed over from the giant gorge almost immediately and found Li Qingyun and the others as quickly as possible. A military helicopter appeared directly in the city, which could easily attract everyone's attention. Even if a fierce battle had just broken out on another street earlier today, its appearance could still attract the attention of everyone present. Li Qingyun and Qilin naturally turned around to look at the helicopter that was getting closer, and Qilin could immediately determine that it was definitely coming to find them. To be precise, it was coming to find Li Qingyun. Because the one who behaved the most strangely all day was definitely Li Qingyun. The helicopter landed in a small square next to the snack street. A middle-aged man in military uniform and two other young people got off the helicopter. The two people, a man and a woman, the man was wearing a suit and sunglasses, and the woman had long red hair and a beautiful face. They were AG and Duko who appeared in the police station during the day. They came straight to Li Qingyun and Qilin, and the guests who were originally sitting closer to them all retreated more than 10 meters away. Everyone was watching quietly, they all wanted to know what exactly happened. You're making such a big scene, aren't you afraid of disturbing the people? Li Qingyun was particularly calm, as if such a scene was nothing to him. Is there such a big sense of separation between the Super God chapter and the Marvel part? How could readers think that these were written by two people? Just because of this, I was so depressed that I couldn't sleep all night. Chapter 195 Duko arrives in person. Everything that happened today has already spread throughout the city. Now it's just a helicopter that has come. They can understand and accept it. Duko obviously didn't care much about the situation around him. But in fact, Lian Fang had already controlled the entire network behind the scenes. Everything that happened here could not be spread through the network. As for the witnesses, they were only a small number of people and could not affect too much. Since you don't think it will affect you, then sit down and eat together, Li Qingyun said, and then turned around and shouted to the store behind, Boss, 3 more clay pot noodles and double the spicy chicken. Duko didn't hesitate and sat down next to Li Qingyun. Duko sat down on the other side, and as for AG, he could only sit at another table alone. This small square table usually only seats 4 people. If there are more, it will be very crowded. If they have a good relationship, they can squeeze together, but the 4 of them are clearly not in the same group, at least not now. Soon, 3 portions of clay pot noodles were served, each with a portion of spicy chicken and peanuts. But this time Li Qingyun ordered a double portion, so the spicy chicken and peanuts were served with 3 more small plates. However, Li Qingyun directly took 2 of the 3 extra small plates, one for himself and one in front of Qilin. Up, Dukao was stunned for a moment, and Du Qiangwei and Qilin both looked up in surprise. How could this be done? Are these spicy chicken and peanuts really that delicious? Do you have to grab them specifically? I came here for an important matter this time. Why are you so careless? Dukao frowned slightly. Li Qingyun's relaxed look made Dukao feel very wrong. I have already asked someone to pass on the important matters to you. Other things don't matter for the time being. Li Qingyun picked up a piece of chicken and stuffed it directly into his mouth. The aroma of chicken and the spicy flavor are perfectly combined. Its strong aroma is perfectly combined with the fragrance of the clay pot noodles, making this portion of noodles cooked in a clay pot taste particularly delicious. We have naturally started to run the super seminary, but the question now is, who are you? Dukao was even more depressed when he saw Li Qingyun like this. Du Qiangwei, who was watching from the side, suddenly began to think whether the clay pot noodles in front of her were really that delicious. She no longer hesitated and directly picked up a piece of chopsticks to taste. Seeing this, Dukao's expression became even uglier. Li Qingyun, my identity is in your database, and you should be able to find it out with a check, Li Qingyun answered, and at this time he also looked at Du Qiangwei on the side, watching her start to happily slurp noodles. That information is likely to be forged, Dukao said. You have the ability of a super soldier, the eye of insight, and can withstand the attack of the Teotihuacan scout without any damage. Later, you cut the Teotihuacan scout in half with a sword. Such strength is not what a super soldier who has just awakened the super gene ability can have. Dukao stared at Li Qingyun, wanting to see how he would answer. I have already met Principal Space 2 years ago, and I am considered a student. Li Qingyun only answered this sentence, but this one sentence was enough. Principal Space, the founder of the super seminary. Li Qingyun is the student of Principal Space, so it is not surprising that he has such a little ability. But the question is, how can all this be confirmed? After the destruction of the Denner civilization, Principal Space began to move around, and the affairs of the super seminary are basically handled by Dukao and Instructor Is. How do you prove what you said? Dukao asked. You can go to the President of Space. I believe your Super God Academy should have a way to contact him. Li Qingyun said the best way to prove himself, but this method made Dukao feel embarrassed. Since you are the student of the President of Space, you should not refuse the invitation of the Super God Academy, right? Since other things cannot be determined in a short time, let Li Qingyun go to the Super God Academy to study first. It is better to keep a person with unknown identity and special strength under the nose. Don't worry, I will go. Li Qingyun wants to know more about Super God technology. To be precise, he wants to know more about super genes, and these super genes are all in the Super God Academy. The 5 God-level genes of galaxy power, sunlight, no Star Wars, time and space rose, and fighting Buddha are all here. In addition, the ability of Prince Chengyao of the Star is also very special. Very good, Dukao finally completed one of the purposes of coming here. However, when he was ready to leave, he found that Du Qiangwei was slurping noodles happily and talking and laughing with Qilin. At this table, he seemed to be the only one who didn't fit in. Eat it, or it won't taste good when it gets cold, Li Qingyun reminded him, and seeing this, Dukao could only pick up the disposable chopsticks and start eating noodles. Even with a large group of people watching him, he, an old man in military uniform, sat between 3 young people, and everything he ate tasted tasteless. After finally finishing his meal, he immediately left with Du Qiangwei and Ag, and Li Qingyun and Qilin also returned to their residences. After leaving, Dukao immediately contacted Riz. Now that the whereabouts of the space principal are erratic, and the Death God Carl has already separated and opened the Death Song Academy in the Dark Nebula, it is now Riz who is in charge of the super seminary. The student of the space principal, Riz, who heard the news, was obviously shocked. I heard not long ago that the principal had found a guy called Barbarian King in Fraser and wanted to guide him to become a super soldier, but I've never heard that he has a student on Earth. Riz was very confused. If the space principal had accepted a student, why didn't he inform him? After all, he, Riz, is now the temporary agent of the Super God Academy. Can I contact the principal and ask him for confirmation in person? Dukao asked. The news from the space principal has been getting less and less recently. He rarely responds to my calls. At this time, I'm afraid that only Rena can contact him, Riz answered. Although he came from Shen civilization with the space principal cares most about the 3 major god-making projects that he advocated and developed. And now the only one that has succeeded is Sunlight Rena. Therefore, if you want to contact the Space Principal, I'm afraid that only Rena can do it. Wait until the Super God Academy is officially opened. I will summon Rena at that time. It won't be too late to let her go and inquire then. Riz answered. That's all we can do, Dukeo said, and then hung up the call. He still had to go to the military headquarters. It was time to explain some things to them. Chapter 196, The Microcosm in the Soul Gem. Li Qingyun returned to his dormitory and took out the Soul Gem. I have spent 2 years researching it. I hope that today's attempt can achieve the expected results. Li Qingyun looked at the Soul Gem in front of him and whispered softly. In the past 2 years, he did nothing and lived a normal life, but in fact, he has been studying the Soul Gem. Li Qingyun's original intention was to open up the dark matter plane space again. But he soon realized that if he opened up the dark matter plane space again, then every time he crossed the dimension in the future, he would have to start all over again. So, he planned to give up this idea, at least, not to open up the dark matter plane space in the broad sense of the universe. There is a special microcosm hidden inside the Soul Gem. If I can enter this microcosm and then open up the dark matter plane space inside it, then no matter which world I go to, I can take it away through the Soul Gem. In addition, I am not afraid even if the Soul Gem is lost, because as long as the dark matter plane is opened up, I can sense it in this universe under any circumstances. The only thing I need to worry about is that it will not be lost in the process of crossing the dimension. Li Qingyun has studied all of this very thoroughly in the past 2 years. Based on the built-in microcosm of the Soul Gem, it can be used as a guarantee when the dark matter plane space is transferred. The unique induction between the dark matter plane space and Li Qingyun can also prevent the loss of the Soul Gem, because as long as they are in the same universe, Li Qingyun can enter the microcosm of the Soul Gem at any time through the dark matter plane space. From the inside, it is natural to determine where the Soul Gem is. Of course, all of Li Qingyun's conjectures must be based on the fact that he can successfully open the special microcosm space entrance in the Soul Gem. In the comics, the Soul Gem was obtained by Adam Warlock, who used it to make himself stronger, and Adam Warlock naturally knew the entrance to the small world inside it, but in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Soul Gem only appears twice, and both times it is used as one of the energy sources for the Infinity Gauntlet. The only information provided in the movie is that it needs to be obtained by sacrificing souls, so, Li Qingyun hesitated for a moment, and then whispered, I hope that the direction of my analysis of energy in the past 2 years is correct. After that, Li Qingyun mobilized the dark energy in his body and began to pour it into the Soul Gem. He guided his own soul power into the Soul Gem, using dark energy as a bridge to communicate his own soul with the power of the Soul Gem. He guided the soul with his soul to resonate. Suddenly, Li Qingyun only felt a strong section released from the Soul Gem, and then Li Qingyun disappeared directly on the spot. His body, pulled by the orange light, directly drilled into a strange space. This is a universe, with a large number of stars scattered around, and even stars. It looks exactly the same as the real universe. Could this be the built-in small universe of the Soul Gem? Li Qingyun looked at everything around him, and he felt that this should be the built-in small universe of the Soul Gem. This universe is completely isolated from the outside world. It is a built-in space independent of all universes. Li Qingyun opened his eyes of inside and began to explore everything in this space. However, the so-called small universe is not as large as a simple planet, which can be easily observed. The small universe in the Soul Gem is not as big as the Milky Way, but at least it is not much different from the Large Magellanic Cloud. It is still impossible for Li Qingyun to cover the entire small universe with his eyes of inside alone. Unless there is a big clock, with the computing power of the big clock, it may be able to cover the small universe. But unfortunately, the big clock was not brought at all. In the following time, Li Qingyun began to seriously explore this entire starry sky and the entire small universe. However, the microcosm has a certain range after all, and it is difficult for Li Qingyun to explore it completely in a short period of time by exploring it with his physical body alone. Thinking that it is not long before the Super God Academy starts, Li Qingyun can't stay in it for a long time. In the world of Super God Academy, it is time to enter the real Super God era. There are many things that Li Qingyun can start to do. The next morning, Li Qingyun called Qilin directly and told her to go to Super God Academy and wait for him there. As for Li Qingyun himself, he went to Huaguo Mountain. He wanted to meet the real super warrior on this planet, the only one with strong combat power now. Leaving Juxia City, he went to a more remote corner of Huaguo Mountain. There is a single family room there, and there lives a god who is unknown to outsiders. Li Qingyun sensed the exact situation here through the eye of insight. He determined the specific location of the fighting Buddha and knew the specific situation of the fighting Buddha at this time. Li Qingyun did not deliberately hide his whereabouts, and his arrival was soon known to the fighting Buddha. This fighting Buddha Sun Wukong appeared on the edge of the cliff and sat there waiting for Li Qingyun to arrive. However, in the process, he still learned about Li Qingyun's situation. He contacted Du Kao to investigate Li Qingyun's information. Why? Fighting Buddha Sun Wukong needs to know about me through outsiders. Li Qingyun has arrived in front of Sun Wukong, and he has never shown his super soldier posture for the first time. That is, his form in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Your divine body level. Sun Wukong looked at Li Qingyun in front of him. His flaming eyes were activating, but he could not read Li Qingyun's specific situation, and he didn't even know what level Li Qingyun's divine body belonged to. Fourth generation divine body. Li Qingyun gave an accurate answer directly. Fourth generation divine body. Sun Wukong was puzzled. According to his understanding, among all super soldiers, there is only the third generation divine body, and Sun Wukong's own Vajra Indestructible belongs to the beast body version of the third generation divine body, also known as the ultimate beast body. This is the latest divine body. There are only two in the known universe. One is me, and the other is Morgana, the Demon King, who will come to Earth soon. Li Qingyun was straightforward with Sun Wukong. Unlike Du Kao and anyone else, Li Qingyun believed in Sun Wukong. This person who came out of their mythology, even if he is just a genetic monkey now, his character is definitely not bad. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197 Joining Forces with Fighting Buddha. Li Qingyun and Sun Wukong were sitting on the edge of the cliff, with beer beside them, and in front of them was the beautiful scenery of the Flower and Fruit Mountain. You mean, you want to cooperate with me to protect the earth together? Sun Wukong asked. He had just heard Li Qingyun explain the specific purpose of his visit, so the two of them could sit here so calmly, drinking beer and looking at the scenery. I like this planet very much, and the principle of space has done me a favor, so protecting this planet is also a responsibility and obligation for me, Li Qingyun said after taking a sip of beer. In that case, why don't you go directly to Du Kao? Sun Wukong asked in confusion. Will it be useful for me to go to him? Li Qingyun asked back. Du Kao can't help me with what I'm going to do next, and if some things are known to the new recruits of the Hero Company too early, it won't be a good thing for them. Li Qingyun actually already had a complete plan in his mind. Through this time in the Super God Academy, before the war begins, he can completely arm himself with stronger combat power, or weaken the opponent's power as much as possible. What are you going to do? What do you want me to do for you? Sun Wukong looked at Li Qingyun. I'm going to subdue a crocodile monster. You go and help me keep the peace. The crocodile monster Li Qingyun was talking about was, of course, the crocodile god Satan. According to Li Qingyun's speculation, the crocodile god Satan would be resurrected in a day or two at most, and Satan was in a weak state, and he had been implanted with some angel concepts by the angel chase, so he could be subdued by anyone. With your strength, you are just going to subdue a crocodile monster, but you actually need me to keep the peace for you. Sun Wukong was a little confused. With Li Qingyun's strength, he was afraid that he would not be able to win, so why did Li Qingyun need his help? If it was just a crocodile monster, I would have easily dealt with it, but this time, there is an elite team of the Teoti Corps waiting to capture the crocodile monster, and there is a guy named North watching behind him. That's why I need one more person to help me watch the scene, just in case. Li Qingyun's strength is not afraid of anyone in this Super God universe, but Li Qingyun knows the truth that two fists cannot beat four hands. Moreover, Li Qingyun has always been a person who is more cautious than safe. Since there is a possibility of mistakes, it is natural to take protective measures in advance. In this case, then I will go with you. I will never refuse to exorcise demons. Sun Wukong agreed. Seeing Sun Wukong agreed, Li Qingyun naturally nodded with satisfaction. After that, Li Qingyun began to monitor the global network and observe the situation in various parts of the Earth in real time through the eye of insight. Once he senses a special energy fluctuation, once he knows the clues of the appearance of the crocodile god Satan, he will go there as soon as possible. Sun Wukong also put on his armor early, holding the golden hoop, and sat beside Li Qingyun, waiting with him. Finally, on the next morning, Li Qingyun, who had been paying attention to the global situation, stood up suddenly. He found the location of the crocodile god Satan. Let's go. Li Qingyun opened the wormhole directly and went in. Sun Wukong followed closely. The two crossed the wormhole and came to the streets of a city. In front of them was Satan, who was being beaten. Even the steel claws of a flying vehicle had already grabbed Satan and were about to take him away. Stay. Li Qingyun had been guarding for a day and a night to catch Satan. How could he let the Teodi Legion take him away at this time? At that moment, he stretched out his right hand and pointed forward, and a black flying blade flew out from behind him, turning into a stream of light and directly cutting off the chain of the iron claw that grabbed Satan. The chain was cut, and Satan fell directly from midair. Li Qingyun took a step forward and was 100 meters away, directly to Suotan's side. After escaping from the predicament, Suotan looked at Li Qingyun, who appeared in front of him, a little confused. Thank you. Although he didn't know the specific situation, since the other party saved him, Suotan still politely said a word of thanks. Sit still, wait until I finish dealing with these guys, I will take you to eat. Okay. Li Qingyun looked at Suotan and asked. There are so many foods here, can't I just eat them directly? Suotan turned his eyes around and looked at those ordinary people. If you dare to touch them, I will chop you up and feed you to the dogs. Li Qingyun's expression was serious, and the moment he looked at Suotan, his eyes revealed murderous intent. Suotan saw Li Qingyun's appearance, and he subconsciously shrank back. At this time, the Teodi soldiers around who were originally ready to retreat gathered again, and the Teodi hidden in the corner aimed the god-killing sniper rifle at Li Qingyun's head. Sit down. If you listen, I'll give you food. If you don't, I'll kill you first. Do you understand? Li Qingyun spoke again, and this time, Suotan sat on the ground with a grievance. He was hungry now. He couldn't even beat those Teodi soldiers. Li Qingyun was much stronger than them, so how could he dare to disobey? The most important thing was that Li Qingyun said he would let him eat enough. If there was any grievance, it would not be too late to settle the score after he was full. Who dares to ruin our good thing? A Teodi soldier pointed directly at Li Qingyun and questioned. Go back and tell your master that this earth is under the protection of me, Li Qingyun. If he wants to do anything, go to another planet, otherwise I will go there and kill him one day in the future, Li Qingyun said, and these words, through the secret communication, directly appeared in the minds of every Teodi soldier in a shocking way. The Teodi sniper hiding in the dark pulled the trigger directly, and a god-killing #1 bullet shot towards Li Qingyun's head. Li Qingyun turned his head and glared, and a wormhole appeared directly in front of the bullet's trajectory, returning the bullet exactly as it was, and shooting directly at the Teodi soldier's forehead. At the same time, a large number of flying blades appeared and flew towards the Teodi soldiers. Seeing this, the Teodi soldiers turned around and fled. Super soldiers are not something they can contend with, and they know this very well. In a corner, a man in a black robe and a mask on his head was about to come over, but at the moment he took the first step, a sharp look looked at him. It was a monkey wearing golden armor, holding a golden hoop, and his eyes were sharp, locked on him. The moment he saw Sun Wukong, Snow understood what the situation was in front of him. Without saying a word, he immediately retreated to the corner and disappeared. Chapter 198, Subjugating the Crocodile God Thornton. Snow retreated, and all the soldiers of Teodi also left. Facing Li Qingyun and Sun Wukong, if Snow had to take action, then he would inevitably expose the true strength of the Death Song Academy, and this was something that the god of death Karl would never allow. Therefore, Snow could only give up Thornton. Li Qingyun felt Snow's departure, and the last trace of worry in his heart disappeared. He turned around and looked at Thornton, saying, let's go eat. Hearing Li Qingyun's words, Thornton jumped up immediately. Great, we can finally go to eat, I'm starving, Thornton shouted excitedly. This silly guy, what he loves most is eating. What are you taking him to eat? Sun Wukong did not appear in the public's field of vision, but he still asked in the communication channel. This guy eats meat, Li Qingyun said. Yes, he just wanted to eat people, The reason why Sun Wukong asked was because he knew that Thornton was a man-eating monster. He just wanted to catch the people around him to eat, but because of Li Qingyun's scolding, he didn't dare to take any action. Now, Li Qingyun said that he would take him to eat, so Sun Wukong naturally knew what Li Qingyun would take him to eat. What's good about people? Isn't roasted whole lamb delicious? Li Qingyun looked at Sultan and said. Roasted whole lamb. What does roasted whole lamb look like? Sultan looked at Li Qingyun with some curiosity. He had eaten lamb before, but the lamb smelled too strong, so Sultan didn't like it very much. You haven't eaten it? Li Qingyun looked at Sultan, and he felt that his guess should be right. If it's raw, then it's natural to eat whatever you see, but if it's processed, it should be possible to replace it with other meat. Li Qingyun took a fancy to Sultan's strength and wanted to accept this little brother, but if he couldn't change his habit of eating people, then Li Qingyun couldn't keep him. After all, Li Qingyun couldn't accept a guy who wanted to eat human flesh every day. Let's go, I'll take you to eat something delicious. After Li Qingyun finished speaking, he took Sultan with him and went directly to the place where Sun Wukong was next to him. Although Sultan didn't understand why, he still followed closely behind him. The three of them met up, and then left this place directly through the wormhole, and they went to the north, to the grassland where cattle and sheep were in large numbers. Eating roasted whole lamb, it must be the best here, because the quality of the lamb here is also the best, and the chefs here are the best at handling these lambs. One person, one monkey and a crocodile, 3 people in this place, made a total of 10 lambs, and 6 of them were eaten by the crocodile. At the beginning, because it was not cannibalism, the crocodile was still very unhappy, but after he took the first bite of meat, he couldn't stop. How is it? This lamb is not bad, Li Qingyun asked, and at this time he was holding a bowl of strong liquor in his hand and took a big gulp directly. The feeling of drinking big gulps of wine and eating big chunks of meat is really refreshing. Well, it's okay, Sultan nodded in agreement. But I still think it's better to eat humans. Thornton eats humans. This is defined in his super gene. This was set when he was designed. Good boy, what can this person eat? Or roasted whole lamb is better. When Li Qingyun spoke, his right hand was placed on Thornton's forehead, but at the same time, a red energy came from his hand. Chaos magic was activated. Li Qingyun wanted to rewrite Thornton's cognition of food, to make him more likely to eat animal meat when eating human meat and animal meat. Thornton was a fool. He didn't know what Li Qingyun was doing at the moment. But Sun Wukong was sitting next to him. He saw it all clearly. However, he believed in Li Qingyun, so he didn't say a word. Okay, if I can eat such delicious meat in the future, I can accept it, Thornton agreed, and he didn't even realize this change. This is a subconscious probability change, which is a further expansion of accepting that this kind of meat can also be used as food on the premise that the feeling of lamb is not bad. I have to go back. I want to realize my dream. Thornton stood up and made a gesture to leave. I saved your life and invited you to dinner. Are you going to leave without saying a word? Li Qingyun said, and Sun Wukong on the side also stared at him. The purpose of their coming to find Thornton was to subdue him. Even if they couldn't subdue him, they had to eliminate him first. Otherwise, with Thornton's strength and his habit of eating people, he would inevitably become a major threat to the Earth in the future. Therefore, Thornton came today and there was no chance for him to leave. You saved me, and I will repay you in the future, Thornton replied. I want to take you as my younger brother, and you will do things for me in the future. The question now is, how can you agree to it? Li Qingyun's tone was the same as always, but the momentum on his body had begun to release slightly at this time. Thornton was also a super soldier, and he could feel this breath. Although he was stupid, he was not completely a fool. He understood what Li Qingyun meant. If you want to be my big brother, you must at least be able to beat me, Sultan said. Just because Li Qingyun saved him from those gluttons and brought him here to eat so much meat, he was not opposed to being Li Qingyun's little brother. But if you want Sultan to obey, at least someone stronger than him must be the best. Let me do it. Sun Wukong had been itching to fight for a long time. Now that he heard that he was going to fight, he stood up immediately. Now I want to take him as my little brother. If you take action, he will definitely not be convinced in the future, so this battle still has to be fought by me. Li Qingyun looked at Sun Wukong and said. That makes sense. Sun Wukong nodded, and then sat back. Sultan, sit down and wait. I will fight with you after I finish this wine, Li Qingyun said, and Sultan had no choice but to sit down first. After Li Qingyun had eaten and drunk enough, the three of them left here and came to an open area on the grassland. Li Qingyun and Thornton stood face to face, while Sun Wukong stood far away and watched quietly. Sun Wukong was actually very curious about the outcome of the fight between Li Qingyun and Thornton. Although he could generally guess that Li Qingyun would win, Sun Wukong still wanted to see how powerful Li Qingyun was. When driving away those Teodi soldiers, Li Qingyun only swung his flying knife and summoned a wormhole to divert the bullets shot at him. Li Qingyun had never used any other means. Chapter 199, Crocodile, can you still go berserk? Come on, I'll let you have 3 moves first. Li Qingyun waved his hand and asked Thornton to come over. Okay, Thornton didn't have so many tricks. Since Li Qingyun asked him to make the first move, he made a decisive move. He flew into the air and threw the axe in his right hand directly. Li Qingyun looked familiar with this move. It was clearly the move Thornton used when he fought Morgana. Morgana stood still and let Thornton cut her, but Li Qingyun didn't do that. He just waved his hand casually, and a red energy appeared in front of him, directly blocking the axe. Seeing that the first knife didn't work, Thornton rushed forward suddenly, and with the help of the axe that was bounced back, he jumped up and split two ocean with force. Oh my god, so cruel. Li Qingyun looked at Thornton's fierce posture, took a half step back with his right foot, squatted slightly, and summoned the Xianxia sword with his right hand, directly sticking it horizontally between his arms. With a clang, Thornton's hand axe and Li Qingyun's Xianxia sword collided fiercely, generating a strong impact force that instantly blew away a large area of the grass under Li Qingyun's feet, and the ground under his feet also sunk downwards to form a pit. Thornton himself was flung more than 10 meters away by the recoil of the impact and fell heavily to the ground. There is one last trick. If you fail again, I will start to fight back. Li Qingyun waved the Xianxia sword in his hand. This weapon is the first weapon that Li Qingyun has made for himself, and it is also a real void-level weapon. Now in this world of the Super Seminary, it is the only one, because even the Death God Carl, who has researched this level of void-level weapons, has not started to manufacture it yet. Thornton and Sun Wukong have already seen the extraordinariness of this long sword. But what they are more curious about now is what effect will be if Li Qingyun starts to fight back. Then you better watch out. This is my last move. As Thornton spoke, his body suddenly doubled in size, and a burst of strong energy burst out from his body, forming a ball of something like mist and water vapor. Oh my god! Crocodile's ultimate move. Li Qingyun was a little dumbfounded. This is Super God Academy, not League of Legends. How can Thornton have this move? Moreover, I have never seen this move in the animation, okay? Rage? It seems that this crocodile is really going to use all his strength. Sun Wukong watched from the side. Although he was a little surprised by Thornton's move, he was not surprised at all. In fact, such a move is not too special for their beast bodies. Thornton is also the ultimate beast body, and it is not surprising to have such an ability. With this move, I can't control my power. If I kill you, don't blame me. As Thornton spoke, his 2 axes began to emit red light at this time, which meant that his energy filled the 2 axes and was about to burst out with stronger attack power. Come on, I'm waiting. Although Li Qingyun was surprised that Thornton could still go berserk, this surprise was only because he didn't know in advance, not because of fear. In fact, the stronger Thornton showed, the more Li Qingyun liked him, because in this way, he would get a more powerful younger brother. Don't even wear armor. Sun Wukong looked at Li Qingyun. Thornton's current strength must be much stronger than before. Although Li Qingyun was able to remain unscathed when facing the previous attacks. But now he is still dealing with it so casually. If something unexpected happens, he will regret it. Sun Wukong directly summoned the golden hoop. He had to be prepared for any eventuality. If Li Qingyun really failed, he had to rescue Li Qingyun and deal with Thornton in the first place. Li Qingyun is a rare fighting force on Earth now, and Thornton is a monster that may bring threats to this world. But the result was not what he expected. Thornton swooped down, wielding his hand axe with both hands and slashing at Li Qingyun at the same time. Li Qingyun stood there, but he raised the heavenly sword in his hand to block the direction of the double axes. There were several continuous clanging sounds of metal colliding, and Li Qingyun took 2 steps back, but Thornton's attack was completely blocked by him. This power is really strong, but it's a pity that the attack is too direct, Li Qingyun said, and then he took a step forward with his right foot, and a terrifying force burst out from his whole body, gathering a burst of black light on the heavenly sword, covering the whole body of the long sword. With a bang, Thornton's huge body was actually blown away. Li Qingyun raised his left hand and grabbed it suddenly in the void. A burst of white light appeared behind Thornton, and it actually bound him from behind. No matter how strong Thornton's power was, he was trapped at such an angle and still couldn't break free, because he couldn't use his strength at all. Just like in the animation, when Satan was lifted up by Morgana's demon claws, Satan couldn't exert any power at all in this state. It seems that this move must be resolved in the future, otherwise, even if he becomes my younger brother, he will be easily grabbed and held when he goes out to fight. This was the first time Li Qingyun used it. Morgana used it once, and later Du Qiangwei also used this move to deal with Satan. Satan can be said to have fallen 3 times in a row because of this move. If Satan becomes a warrior under Li Qingyun in the future, how can he have such an obvious weakness? He must eliminate it. However, he can still use this move to deal with Satan now, and accept him first. You have used up your 3 moves, do you still need me to make another move now? Li Qingyun asked, and Satan, who was being lifted in the air and struggling but unable to move at all, lowered his head with a depressed look on his face. Your move is too tricky, I can't hit you at all, Thornton said. He could still throw the axe now, but it was useless to Li Qingyun. He actually knew that he couldn't beat Li Qingyun, but he was still depressed. Don't worry, you will be my little brother in the future. I will definitely help you solve this shortcoming, how about it? Li Qingyun said, and then he loosened his left hand and put Thornton down directly. Then it's a deal, you have to help me solve this shortcoming in the future. Thornton put away his hand axe, and his violent state was lifted. When did I break my promise? Li Qingyun asked back. Okay, then I will follow you in the future. Thornton was willing to accept the defeat. Since he had already lost to Li Qingyun, he would listen to Li Qingyun. Chapter 200, Demon King Morgana. After successfully conquering Satan, Li Qingyun had an extra strong fighting force. Seeing this result, Sun Wukong admired Li Qingyun a little more. You have conquered Satan, what are you going to do next? Sun Wukong came to Li Qingyun's side. Now everything has not started, but it will arrive soon. The Taodi army is on the way. This news was brought by Reina. It is for this reason that the super soldiers have awakened one after another. Even with Satan, our strength is still weak, Li Qingyun said. We need enough time for the entire civilization to develop together. At the same time, we also need those young people to truly awaken, not just the ability to have super genes, but to truly become warriors. Li Qingyun did not plan to go to the Super God Academy now. He needed to let those super soldiers develop on their own for a while and let them experience some battles first. Du Kao should have communicated with you, right? Li Qingyun asked. Yes, Sun Wukong nodded. He meant that I should test the soldiers after the establishment of the Xiangbinglian, and then join the Xiangbinglian. Sun Wukong was the spiritual leader of the Xiangbinglian of the Super God Academy, and Li Qingyun knew this very well. Even though Reina was the captain, and even though Jezialan gradually became the actual leader of the Xiangbinglian, all the soldiers in the Xiangbinglian still admired Sun Wukong the most. Like the Noxing war god Liu Trang, he went from a gangster to the most determined Great Wall #1 because of the influence of Sun Wukong. Then go ahead, you have to do these things. Li Qingyun had no objection to this, and even felt that Sun Wukong had to do all this. What about you? Sun Wukong looked at Li Qingyun, and he was most curious about what Li Qingyun wanted to do. I can't be exposed to the Xiangbinglian too early, otherwise they will only have too much dependence and will not be able to grow up, Li Qingyun said. That's good, Sun Wukong had no objection to this. Sometimes, these new recruits really can't live too comfortably. By the way, I have no objection to you training the others, but you have to be gentle with Qilin. If you hurt her, I will never forgive you. Li Qingyun and Qilin have been together for 2 years. Although they are not really together, they have a deep relationship. He couldn't bear to let Qilin be beaten by Sun Wukong. Okay, I will, Sun Wukong agreed and then left on his own. He had to go back and wait until the Xiangbing company had completed its assembly, and then go to reorganize it. After that, he might have to lead them to fight 1 or 2 foreign wars to let them adapt to what real fighting is like. Li Qingyun and Suotin temporarily avoided the recruitment of the Super Seminary and delayed the time to go to the Super Seminary. Before that, there was not much that Li Qingyun could do. But perhaps, he could go find Morgana. She was also alone when she first came to Earth. The Demon Legion suffered heavy losses after the last battle with the Angel Legion. Lian Bing needed time to let the demon warriors recover through gene implantation. Wang Village, outside Xi'an City. Li Qingyun was sitting in a small restaurant with Suotan. Suotan's body was simulated by Li Qingyun's data. To outsiders, he was no different from a normal person. However, although he looked the same as a normal person, he ate a roasted whole lamb, 10 braised pork elbows, and 80 kilograms of braised beef in this meal. He alone took away the survival of the entire restaurant for half a month. It was also surprising. Why do you have to come here? There is too little meat here, not enough to eat, Suotan complained. He is now Li Qingyun's younger brother. Following this big brother in the human world, the happiest thing is to eat and drink everywhere. But today, he suddenly came to Huangkan and felt particularly boring in such a small restaurant. The reason is that there is too little to eat here. Haven't you eaten enough in the past 2 days? Li Qingyun looked at Suotan. This guy has only been with him for 2 days, and he eats several roasted whole lambs every day. Today, in this small restaurant in Huangkan, there was really not so much meat. He only ate a little less, but he started to complain. Enough, enough. Thornton was not greedy. I just can't understand why not in those big cities. There are wine and meat there, the portions are enough and delicious. Why did you come to this small village for no reason? Thornton said. He just didn't understand why he had to come here. You will know soon, Li Qingyun said. Just as he finished speaking, a dark energy suddenly covered the entire village, and a wormhole suddenly appeared in the sky. A figure appeared in the wormhole, a figure wearing a black leather coat and a pair of black wings on his back. This is Morgana, the Demon King. This is her first time to come to the Earth, and she will directly implant the demon genes into the villagers of this village, and through these villagers, the demon warriors who once died in battle will be resurrected again. In the battle between the demon army and the angel army, they were able to recover quickly after each defeat, relying on this technology. This technology was extremely hated and firmly opposed by the angel army. Morgana had just arrived. She originally wanted to show the power of the demons and give the people in the village a brainwashing speech. However, this time she did not do it like in the animation. The first time she appeared in this space, she immediately sensed the existence of 2 powerful dark energy fluctuations. She soon discovered the man and the beast who were sitting in the small restaurant eating meat. They could make her, the Demon King, feel very powerful dark energy. And they happened to be right where she had just arrived. They were obviously coming for her. Lian Bing ignored the others and turned directly to the small restaurant where Li Qingyun and Suotan were. She had to meet this man and beast. She had to see who knew that she would appear here early and stayed here to wait. Li Qingyun and Suotan in the small restaurant naturally knew about Morgana's arrival. Thornton looked at Morgana, his nose moved, and he smelled a delicious aroma. It smells so good, is this birdman edible? Thornton turned around and asked Li Qingyun, and his words made Morgana, who had just walked to the door, pause. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.